When you're authentic to who you are, everything else will fall in place. People are gonna love, they're gonna hate, but you never know who's watching.
Everything I do, I want it to be as original as it can be.
Somebody did it like this, I'm gonna do it this much iller.
Who comes back and rescues himself?
This was our moment to let people know how we felt as a team.
We've revolutionized this game with our influence.
What are your thoughts for the future?
I helped build the most magical place in the world.
What do you say we come in for my close-up now?
I always wanted to be part of something bigger.
I made it on my terms, not theirs.
Here's the twist.
Whoa! I'm in so much trouble, Mandy.
It's over.
You have no idea what's next.
We are gonna be more than they ever bargained for.
Babylon, rated R, now streaming on Paramount+.
You and I have traveled to the far reaches of space. But something's different now. This is the end, my friend.
Got it!
Ladies and gentlemen, a very big night of action taking place here in the beautiful city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. For our opening attraction, Joseph Adorno, 140 pounds, and his opponent, Elvis Rodriguez, 139 3/4 pounds. In the welterweight division, Alberto Palmetta, 147 pounds.
Now it's my time to make a statement in professional boxing.
And his opponent, 146 3/4 pounds for the former world champion, Jamal James.
In your hometown, be the first time we've seen you in 16 months.
Hey, y'all miss me or what? A lot of people miss me. I'm ready, and now I just want to give a great show.
For the featured attraction of the evening, the undefeated Jeremias Ponce, 139.5 pounds, and his opponent, El Orgullo de Maternillo, Subriel Matias. Matias weighs in at a ready 139.25 pounds.
I didn't come here on vacation. I'm here to win and to prove that I'm the best. The Prime Marnillo is gonna win by knockout before the 7th round.
Does this fight go the distance?
Knockout.
There you have it.
Matias versus Ponce on Showtime.
Your countdown begins right now ahead of tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing triple header, 9 p.m. Eastern from the Armory in Minneapolis, when Subriel Matias takes on Jeremias Ponce for the vacant IBF Junior Welterweight World Title. Good evening, it's Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas. You may know us from the award-winning Morning Combat Showtime Digital Combat Sports Series, but tonight, right now, it is Showtime Boxing Countdown. Setting the stage, Luke, for this evening's triple header. We'll have a trio of preliminary fights. We'll look ahead at the big things happening on the Showtime Sports Combat Sports schedule over the next few months. But tonight's main event that we're building to, you want to talk about what? Fireworks in the winter in Minnesota through the snow? It's going to be a little bit of 4th of July this evening.
Yeah, it's not quite July, obviously, as BC indicated. We know it's pretty cold in Minneapolis in this time of February, but it is going to be very, very spicy action in that main event when Subriel Matias taking on Jeremias Ponce. What a contest. They're obviously fighting for the title that Josh Taylor once had in the IBF for 140 pounds. And you've got two guys who you can say whichever you want about them. And there's a lot of good things and, of course, some criticisms as well. But action fighters, all action fighters, high volume, both of them for the division. This one is going to be extra good.
Continuing the story of a somewhat sneaky Puerto Rico versus Argentina rivalry here in tonight's main event for Subriel Matias, though. 18-1 with 18 KOs, one of just 4 active fighters in the game today that are ranked and also have knockouts in every single victory. So we know the power he brings. But Jeremias Ponce from Argentina.
Yeah.
You don't want to put a stereotype on a country, but you're telling me a guy's with an unbeaten record's coming from Argentina to fight for a world title. I'm going to tell you he's going to be hungry, aggressive, and looking to get the finish.
Well, 30-0 as well. I mean, the guy has a ton of experience. Now, you might be saying, well, does he have experience against guys the level of Matias? No, he does not. He does not have that. But that's why we're having a fight like this tonight. It's 1 versus 2, basically, in the rankings in terms of who is ready for this opportunity. So these guys have both put themselves in a position to do this. This fight was supposed to happen, by the way, quite a while ago, and it got delayed. But here it is tonight. It's finally going to take place. And these guys are not just deserving, as I mentioned before, action fighters. And yeah, there's a lot of questions about it. Can Matias deal with the lanky kind of pressure fighter that Ponce is? But can Ponce deal with not only the volume of Matias, how about that big power that guy represents? Huge power from him. And by the way, both guys have so far shown some good chins. They're going to need it tonight.
Ponce looking to become the 6th Argentine-born fighter to win a world title at 140 pounds. One of those 5, his own promoter, Marcos Maidana, who we know has made the kind of noise that Ponce's looking to do in tonight's U.S. debut. We will take you, though, to the top of the start, 9 p.m. Eastern of tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing triple header, 6 p.m. in the Pacific. We have a trio of preliminary bouts that we are very excited to get to beforehand. And, of course, in our featured bout, we're going in the welterweight division, once beaten Kudratillo Abdu Kakarov. We saw his one loss to Cody Crowley, who's a rising fighter at 154 pounds, and we're going to see Abdu Kakarov take on Vashon Owens, looking to get back on track. So it should be a good featured one here in Minneapolis, Luke, when we're talking about the Armory. It's becoming a special place.
It really is. It's one of the places I've not been yet, so shame on me for not having made my way out there. But for the folks who have, I hear nothing but good things. You've been there, I think, a number of times.
I've been there one time, and I'll tell you this, real boxing fans. And it's like, we have that in Southern California. We have that in pockets across the country. New York, Brooklyn, of course, always giving us a great crowd. But there's just something about the purity of that Minneapolis crowd. Obviously, they've embraced their homegrown stars, guys like Jamal James, the former secondary welterweight champion, who will be in tonight's co-main event at Showtime Championship Boxing. But even David Morrell Jr., the rising 168-pound secondary title holder, who has now made Minneapolis home because of how aggressive that fan base is, the attention he's getting, and how much love they're giving him. So love to see it there at the Armory. Once, Luke, the home of the NBA's Minneapolis Lakers back in the 40s and 50s, but was refurbished in 2018 and has had 10 boxing shows there. Showtime, no stranger, of course, to this arena. We're excited to build to tonight's triple header. But Luke Thomas, it's hard to not go any further when we're talking about the future of the boxing calendar, the future of what's going on in Showtime sports, when the big announcement in just recent days went down that April 22nd on Showtime pay-per-view, it's really going to happen. A 136-pound catchweight bout between 2 unbeaten knockout artists, maybe 2 of the biggest stars in the game today, Gervonta Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia. Luke Thomas, we're going to talk about this at length later, but it's really happening now. What does this mean? What are your feels when you look at what this means to the sport of boxing in 2023?
This is what every fan has been waiting for, right? This is Christmas Day. I mean, it's not Christmas yet. It will be on April 22nd. But, I mean, what is there to not like? 2 of the biggest young stars in boxing, frankly, 2 of the biggest stars in boxing, if we can just be honest. Certainly one has more experience on pay-per-view, but one is a dramatic knockout threat. Actually, both are, but one's got incredible speed. They want to test each other. They're undefeated. They're in their 20s. Like, what on earth could be bad about this fight? This is the one you want to see. And honestly, both guys, I think most people would say, great test for the other. There remain some unknowns about both of them, and each guy presents a unique challenge for their competitor. I give both guys credit, BC, for having the gusto and the willingness to risk it against a very, very difficult opponent in either direction. I take my hat off to these
gentlemen. We can sometimes talk about how it's hard to make fights in boxing. This one wasn't easy to make, but you have 2 young stars, opposite sides of the lines in terms of promotions and network affiliation, yet we're all coming together for the showdown. April 22nd, Showtime pay-per-view. But let's get things kicked off for our preliminary action here on the Showtime Boxing Countdown and the build-up to tonight's triple header at 9 p.m. Eastern. We will kick off in the welterweight division. We're going to go 4 rounds here. Look at the young fighters coming in. We're talking about Mikel Spencer taking on Margarito Hernandez, the veteran. But when I said young fighters, I meant Mikel, just 20 years old, the younger brother of rising junior middleweight prospect turned contender here, Joey Spencer. So we'll see if the Spencer family can continue to make noise. There's 20-year-old Mikel Spencer right there, 2-0 in his young career. We'll see what he does as he continues on here against a veteran opponent. When you got a first name like Margarito, Luke, it tells you some boxing toughness there, right? Shout out to the former welterweight champion, Antonio Margarito.
Yeah, certainly. Also part of a grand Mexican boxing tradition. So he is going to be a worthy adversary.
4 rounds in the 147-pound division to kick off inside the Armory there in downtown Minneapolis, a historic venue, and let's get things going. You see the southpaw Spencer in the white gloves. Linden, Michigan is the home. Quick punches early from Spencer against the veteran Hernandez out of that orthodox stance.
Yeah, already the reactions from Hernandez. He looks flummoxed and a bit confused. The hand speed, I think, of Spencer giving him problems already.
Spencer, a 4-time national champion in the amateurs for the U.S., decorated background.
Spencer already working the body, then going upstairs. Putting the jab, by the way, a lot in the face, and actually punches in general in the face of Hernandez, not just to hit, but to blind, so that the subsequent shot does well. By the way, look at the confidence on young Spencer.
Check that. This is a 140-pound bout to kick us off.
And by the way, it's only scheduled for 4 rounds. I remain unconvinced we're going to see all 4. Spencer is so far engaging in target practice. Essentially everything he is throwing lands. Switching stance there, by the way. That's nice. He goes to orthodox. Hernandez has not adjusted yet. Look at that left hook to the body.
Mikel Spencer putting it on. Margarito Hernandez in the early going.
Hernandez needs to slow this down, BC. It's just he's letting Spencer dictate the pace, which is just not a pace he can keep.
Hernandez enters on a streak of 2 straight defeats. 30-year-old fighting out of Wapato, Washington. Right now it's Mikel Spencer switching stances, getting off with the left hook.
Referee might not let this go for too much longer. Yeah, right.
Down goes Hernandez on a right hand, and as you mentioned, the fight is over. It took 1 round for 18-year-old Mikel Spencer to continue to make a little bit of noise in the early going, 3-0 to start off his pro career with his 2nd finish.
That was too easy. That was too easy. He made it look effortless. I'm sure he trained hard, and I'm sure that he's got skills well above what he was able to hear to show tonight. But against this opponent, he did everything he wanted to. It was like, look at the replay there, left hook. I mean, he's just doing target practice.
Spencer started as a southpaw, switched to the righty late in round 1. You can see the big uppercuts, leading with the big left hand while waving the glove on the right hand.
Just overwhelming force of nature, going to the body, hitting the pull-to counter when he wanted it, changing angles, changing stances. A very commanding performance for a young man just 20 years of age.
Mikel Spencer, as we mentioned, the younger brother of Joey Spencer, who coming up has a very big fight on the March 25th Showtime pay-per-view. Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez matchup. We can't wait for that one in Las Vegas. But on that pay-per-view main card, Joey Spencer 16-0, going to take on 19-0 Jesus Ramos in a very key bout in the 154-pound division in terms of positioning for the future. So that should be an interesting one. But the Spencer family starting off the new year with a bang. Right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. 20 years old, and he looked great. Again, you didn't get a fuller test to know exactly what the limits are of his abilities. But at 20 years old, he's not supposed to be getting his full limits tested. He's supposed to be getting experience. He's supposed to be getting subsequently more difficult opponents as he goes on. This was just his 3rd professional contest. I think he looked great for a 3rd professional contest. Good hand speed, good movement. Again, we see it a lot. The stance switching, a little bit more common among the younger guys. I think more general in boxing, it's more common than it once was.
What's interesting is we both cover, of course, mixed martial arts on the same level we do boxing every week on Morning Combat here on Showtime Digital. And it's almost become commonplace in mixed martial arts where oftentimes the striking is behind the level, of course, of where it is in boxing when we're talking about the simple machinations of a boxing stance. But you see that very often for young fighters on the way up in MMA, the switching stance becoming a normal thing. Used to be a thing, well, Marvin Hagler did it, Terrence Crawford does it well. Ooh, this young Jaron Boots Ennis does it very well.
Yeah, he sure does.
More and more, though, we're seeing fighters implement something that was seen as almost this exclusive luxury that you could be elite enough to work into your game, now just part of the commonplace attack. You got to be good enough to pull it off, though.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if he can do it as the opponents get more difficult as his career progresses. But tonight, he couldn't miss. I would love to see what the percentage was of successful punches landed. Obviously, it won't be 100, but it'll be high. It'll be high.
Time of finish was 2 minutes, 18 seconds of round one for Mikkel Spencer. One fight down on our preliminary triple header here as we set the stage for tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing card, 9 p.m. Eastern from the Armory in Minneapolis for that vacant 140-pound world title IBF belt on the line in tonight's main event when Subriel Matias takes on Jeremias Ponce. Two sluggers. They are going to go after it. It should be a fun one for the belt formerly worn by Josh Taylor. Luke Thomas, we're going to see a good-looking triple header this evening, and it's not just this main event. We're talking about the hometown boy there in Jamal James Shango, former secondary welterweight world title holder. He's fought in the Armory 4 different times. This will be his 5th and first appearance since 2019. But the larger story for Jamal James as he welcomes Argentine former Olympian Alberto Palmetta is we haven't seen Jamal James since losing that title in late 2021 against Raja Butayev. This will now be the longest layoff of his career, but hearing him talk this week, Luke, it seems like the confidence is back. It seems like the time away did him good. He got married in the interim. What does Jamal James have left at this point in his career? It's going to be interesting to see this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. In fact, this is a theme for the night in general. Both of the main event competitors, I know you're asking about the co-main,
Sure.
but just as sort of like to connect the dots here, both of the main event competitors, one has been off 13 months, and then the other one has been off, I think, 300-plus days, so about 10 months and some change. There's a lot of guys coming into tonight in unusual circumstances, not merely because it's a blizzard outside in Minneapolis, but also they've had a lot of time off, and for different reasons, to your point, whether it was they were waiting for a mandatory, whether it was they were waiting for a different kind of the fight to get made, or someone had some other life circumstances. Everything's a little bit different, but a lot of guys having to answer that question of what happens when you take an unusual amount of time off and have to come back on the big stage. We are going to find out this evening at 9 p.m. only on Showtime.
16-month layoff there for Jamal James as he looks to snap the time off against Alberto Palmetta with an 18-1 record and 13 KOs in this 10-round welterweight co-main. And if we're looking at a little bit of the idea of redemption, this opening bout to kick off tonight's triple header at 9 p.m. Eastern, two former big-time prospects who each had a setback but are coming back in this one looking to make some noise in that 140-pound division when Elvis Rodriguez, the southpaw from the Dominican Republic, takes on Joseph Adorno. Raised in Pennsylvania, Puerto Rican, though, in terms of what he represents in the boxing game and big-time power. We've seen both of those lose in the past, but I tell you from my time working on the SHOWBOX, the New Generation card, all the way to championship when we saw Oshaki Foster just a few weeks ago to go down on Showtime to San Antonio and win a world title at 130 pounds against Ray Vargas. We've seen Oshaki Foster lose twice on the SHOWBOX level, win twice, turn it around, and come back. I like when we don't count losses early in a fighter's career against them in boxing like we used to. Maybe we learn some lessons from mixed martial arts where it's more often you'll see very good elite fighters who have had more setbacks younger, but sometimes you need to learn on the job to get better and keep growing.
Well, life circumstances get in the way. Maybe you got the wrong fight at the wrong time and you weren't ready for it. I mean, there could be any number of reasons why a loss should not be disqualifying about someone's future. I mean, it's strange to have to say that out loud, but this is the business that we're in. And so we have to know and have to say out loud a couple of stumbles early, or in this particular case, each fighter has one loss, I believe, yes. So there, there's been some situations individually where they have fallen short. Or listen, the guy that went up against that night was simply better, but that does not mean that they are incapable, and that was the upper bound limit of what they can show. There is much beyond that. To your point, here on when we saw it last time on Showtime Championship Boxing with Oshaki Foster, really proving that, I mean, he was left on the side of the promotional road after those two losses and had to really claw his way back, but that he did. Now he is a world champion. We have to have a little bit more patience in the sport and a little bit more understanding of if you fight the best guys or very good guys all the time, you're going to lose. I know Floyd didn't. I get it. But he is the exception that frankly proves the rule. You expose yourself to enough risk, the risk will win in the end. that doesn't make them bad fighters. That doesn't make them guys who can't beat other good fighters. It just means it wasn't their night.
What can you learn from that? And these guys have put the learning to the test when you consider Elvis Rodriguez, who trained by Freddie Roach, was a 20-1 favorite when he took on Kenneth Sims Jr., a fighter who had a big amateur background, was once a bright prospect himself, lost a decision. It was a big-time upset. But what has Rodriguez done since then? Bounced back with a pair of knockouts. And for Adorno, we saw him on Showtime Championship Boxing against Michel Rivera. It was a fight, he says, after the fact he took last minute, had to cut a lot of weight to get there, lost a ho-hum decision. But Adorno bounced back in a big way on Showbox a few months back. So big opportunities once again on Showtime Championship Boxing also for these pair of fighters who, by the way, both fought the last time here. Showtime was in the Armory last March. It was Tim Tszyu against Terrell Gaucher. Both of these fighters did fight on that undercard.
Yeah, and I realized that Frank Martin got the best of Rivera when they met recently. But Rivera is a tough fight to have for anyone. That is an extremely difficult assignment. To take that on short notice with a tough weight cut, yeah, that's tough to win no matter who you are. The idea that that represents the best that he has to offer, to me, seems silly. I think tonight we're going to get a much better chance at seeing what the real possibilities are.
Of course, that card, the Tim Tszyu, Terrell Gaucher, was a little bit more than a year ago in Minnesota. Showtime also came back with Stephen Fulton Jr. scoring a big victory over Danny Roman in this same arena. But we're just about time to get back to the ring for our second of 3 preliminary bouts on this evening. Why don't we head on over there, Luke? Looking to see some back and forth here. Looking to see a little bit of action as we get things going here in this welterweight division. Derek Jackson going to take on Willie Jones, 4 rounds. You see Jones there dressed in the camouflage. How about a legendary trainer in his corner, Houston's Ronnie Shields?
Yeah, Ronnie Shields having, it's only 2 months into the year, but he's having a great year already. And he had a great last year, and he's had a lot of success more recently. Obviously, he's had success for some time in boxing, more recently as a trainer. I think, what would you say, was 2022 his best year as a trainer?
Well, look, he's a guy who had a lot of early success in his younger days as a trainer.
Yeah.
Worked under some of the biggest names as a young guy. Been in the corner for Evander Holyfield, so many big names. But specifically that run of late, when you're talking about, he was with both Charlo brothers. Eventually, Jermel left, but he's with David Morrell Jr. right now, the unbeaten 168-pound title holder. Been with Eruslandi Lara for many years before that, until recently. So a lot of big name fighters, a lot of younger fighters that he's starting to add to as he continues to keep his name up there as one of the best trainers. He'll be in the corner tonight of 31-year-old Willie Jones, 8-2 record with 5 KOs, fighting out of North Carolina. Has an amateur victory, by the way, over 2-time world champion Regis Prograis, who's currently the WBC champion at 140 pounds. And Willie Jones will be taking on a man they call Diesel, unbeaten Derek Jackson, 10-0 with 5 KOs in just a few seconds inside the Armory. Looking forward to get this going. But 9 p.m. Eastern, of course, is the start of tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing triple header. Matias versus Ponce. If you don't have Showtime, now would be a good time. I don't know, get that for free, Showtime.com, 30-day free trial. Test the waters. You can start your trial right now.
If you like it, you can keep it. If not, you don't have to keep it. That's the best part about the Showtime free trial offer.
There's the great pitch right there. Derek Jackson and Willie Jones, 147 pounds. Our second of 3 preliminary bouts just about to get started. So we head on back over to the Armory, downtown Minneapolis.
By the way, BC, sorry to cut you off. The last fight was 4 rounds. This one's scheduled for 8.
My information incorrect. I apologize.
We shall see if this one goes the distance.
Derek Jackson, just 20 years old.
A lot of young guys.
A lot
really
of young guys on this evening's card.
Obviously, it's always, or I should say, it's generally true that the prelims are going to have younger fighters. But to have a couple of 20-year-olds, that's a little bit unusual.
I was in error. I said 2 ages earlier. Mikkel Spencer, who scored the first round, finished in the opening bout, just 18 years old.
Wow.
Excuse me. There you see the face-off. Referee Mark Nelson, a resident of the state of Minnesota, but one of the game's top referees across the U.S. today. In the camouflage trunks is Willie Jones, 6'1". Both fighters fighting out of the orthodox stance tonight. And our co-feature on the Showtime Boxing Countdown, and here we go, round one. Derek Diesel Jackson in the black trunks. They're letting their hands go early, Luke Thomas.
Yeah, Jones already throwing with some heat.
20-year-old Derek Jackson describes himself as a boxer-puncher who can change his style based on what his opponent is giving him. And early on here, Willie Jones giving him a good taste of that big left jab, excuse me.
I saw something earlier from Jones. I don't know if he was doing it as a fake out to draw the eyes of his opponent, but he was definitely looking down as he jabbed to the body. Got to be careful with that. That could result in a lot of problems.
First of 8 rounds in this welterweight bout. Both fighters have gone the 8-round distance one time in their career. Both have also gone the 6-round distance a second time.
You see Jones tried to go with a left hook to the body, but Jackson saw it coming a mile away and went right over the top of the left hook. Great awareness and punch by Jackson, excuse me. Oh, my word!
And that's the fight right there. Woo! Willie Jones demolishing Derek Jackson in just 1 round. Just like that. That was a quick one. Wow.
Derek Jackson was undefeated. Now he's got a loss on his record. What a shot from Willie Jones.
The Ronnie Shields coached fighter, 31 years old from North Carolina. Willie Jones just landed a big shot in the first loss on the record of 20-year-old Derek Jackson.
That was spectacular.
Jackson remains down.
He was out before he hit the canvas. Jab. Let's see. Oh, so he went jab, and then the guy thought he was going to jab with him again, and instead he just hooks it. Jab. Changes angles. Looks like he's going to jab, and instead hooks it. Oh.
Looping left hook on the money. And Jackson was out before he even landed. Fight over, referee Mark Nelson not needing to deliver the 10 count. Willie Jones improving to 9-2 overall in his career with his 6th stoppage. And Luke, considering Derek Jackson was an unbeaten welterweight prospect coming in, he qualified for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo for the nation of Haiti, of which both of his parents were born, but did not fight when the Olympics, of course, were delayed 1 more year and turned pro. But this is the first loss of that young unbeaten fighter's career. You don't want to say the old adage, you hook with a hooker, as they were trading jabs in there, but it was a well-disguised hook by Willie Jones that got the job done.
Yeah, that was good hand speed, good awareness. Again, all of this is about pattern recognition. What do they show you? What are you seeing? And then change it up, obviously, with every kind of subsequent shot. You saw exactly that. Went to the jab, switched angles, looked like he was going to the jab again. Instead, gave him a hooking punch. He was wide open. And, of course, we all know the ones you don't see are the ones that land with the most authority. And certainly he gives you the least amount of resistance to roll with it. He absorbed every ounce of the shot. And, by the way, I still got to say I'm a little bit concerned. He's still down.
Derek Jackson has sat up briefly. They're taking off his gloves there in the ring. The ringside doctor still
that was a tough KO. When you're out before you even hit the canvas, that's a bad one.
It's a big shocker here as Willie Jones, 8-2 record coming in, gets his 9th win, but does it in very surprising fashion. Yes, he's got a legendary trainer, Ronnie Shields, behind him, but at 31 years old, that's a big-time win for a fighter who's looking to make some noise here. Considering you're going against an unbeaten prospect, and let's consider once again, Willie Jones, as I mentioned, has that amateur victory over current 140-pound world title holder Regis Prograis. His only pro losses up to this point had been a first-round knockout loss against Levan Navarro in 2017 and lost an 8-round split decision 3 years ago to Luke Santamaria. But this has to be considered a very big breakthrough victory as Willie Jones snaps a 20-month layoff to get a first-round knockout, and that was a no-doubter against Derek Jackson, who is up on the stool and seated as the medical staff continues to
attend to him
in the center
He stood
of
briefly.
the ring.
Now he's sitting on some kind of milk crate. He appears to be responsive. The medical staff are evaluating him, so I think he'll be okay. What a knockout. What a spectacular knockout.
2 fights down on our Showtime boxing countdown preliminary action to set the stage for tonight's 9 p.m. Eastern triple header main event. But Luke, we're going to continue to build up to Subriel Matias taking on Jeremias Ponce for the vacant IBF super lightweight title at 140 pounds. But let's get back into what we talked about when we look at this boxing calendar and the Showtime sports calendar. And when we look at April 22nd, we know originally the Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Tank Davis fight, which will be 12 rounds, 136-pound catchweight bout. No title on the line, but with this type of star power, you don't need to. Originally, April 15th was the target date, but we got a nice little shocker come Thursday afternoon when both fighters, Showtime Sports President Steven Espinoza as well, confirming on Twitter. I believe Gervonta had the first tweet out there mentioning the date, mentioning the city, which will be Las Vegas. The site not yet confirmed, but we got the contract signed. Everybody's involved. We know Ryan Garcia fought his promoter to make this fight happen. Everyone pushed back and said, no, let's do it now. Not when they're 33, not when they're 35 years old. Right now, as you see the tweets confirming and announcing. One of the biggest fights you can make this calendar year, but one of the cool parts about it when we talk about that they're fighting now at this age, at age 28 and 24, rather than, let's say, like I mentioned, 33, 35, Mayweather-Pacquiao, we had to wait a long time to the build, is just as spectacular and talented and exciting as they are. To varying degrees, you would still say somewhat unproven across the board. Gervonta Davis more proven at the elite level, certainly a routine pay-per-view headliner, but both have something to prove against one another without question.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. They've not tested the very best of their generation yet.
Sure.
This is another step in that process for both of them. And so, yes, there are questions about Ryan Garcia. How would he deal with the power of Tank Davis? And Tank Davis isn't, throwing a ton of volume typically, but he's highly accurate. He's a devastating knockout puncher, except for Isaac Cruz. I think he's put basically everyone else away with a knockout. So we're just talking about a generationally powerful puncher, but at the same time, Ryan Garcia, insanely fast hands, and now training with Team Goosen and what that's going to do for him in terms of reforming his style. We've seen a little bit of evidence of it, but against Tank, is he still going to have that forward pressure kind of moment or strategy? I guess I'm really curious to see, but either way, massive stakes for both, and like any good fight, a great fact-finding opportunity. What is really true about the limits and strengths of Tank Davis? What is really true about the limits and strengths of Ryan Garcia when they are forced to go against a competitor of this kind in either direction? You get a lot of answers about what they are really, really made of. I can't wait for April 22nd.
And this fight proves at least that there's some level of a new trend that's starting that I'd like to continue to blow the horn for. And two, is the idea that the younger fighters of this era, and there's no shortage of potential young stars that are teasing us of greatness to come, but the idea that they want the smoke, that they want to fight each other. In Ryan Garcia's case, that he pushed back against his own handlers and said, no, I need this fight now. I don't just want it, I need it now. Do you get that feeling like you're seeing this more? Because, look, we all want our own era's version of the Four Kings, which was, the stars of the 1980s, those four fighters that fought each other combined 9 times. Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, the hitman Tommy Hearns, 4 first ballot Hall of Famers there that, of course, were part of that great Four Kings documentary that you can catch on Showtime Sports. We may have a new era. Our colleague of Showtime, Karen Mulvaney of the Showtime Boxing Podcast with Eric Raskin, has called them the Four Princes, but there may be even more than 4 when you talk about who we're talking about here. Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia, yes. There's Devin Haney. There's Shakur Stevenson. There's Teofimo Lopez. There's so many young fighters in and around 130, 135, 140 that are really starting to announce that while today's generation, today's era of the elite fighters, maybe the Canelos, the Spences, the Crawfords, the Inoues, who's next? You got to fight each other to prove that ultimately at the end of the day. So to get these two to fight each other now, you certainly could say based on experience and previous performances who you may think has the edge. Certainly we mentioned the experience edge for Tank Davis at the highest level. But both fighters can punch. Both fighters have some level of question about what the other's style will do against them, right? The chin of Ryan Garcia against the power of Tank Davis. How about that speed and length of Garcia that Tank's going to have to deal with on the flip side? There's going to be a lot that's going to have to be proven. And at the same time, this fight can end at any point because both are offensive superstars that go after it, right? Say what you will about whatever vulnerabilities Ryan Garcia might have. We saw him get dropped in his biggest win a couple years back against Luke Campbell and come back and get that finish. But he goes after it, and he's going to try to get you before you get him. So April 22nd, Showtime pay-per-view in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Do not miss that.
Yeah, another aspect to the fight that I really love is frankly, kind of like the celebrity aspect of it. And not just that there will be a bunch of celebrities ringside. I mean, that's obviously going to be true given the various fan bases that Tank and Ryan have. I don't mean that, but I just mean two guys who are young, who are very popular, who also have fans that are going to be of their demographic coming together to show everyone what is possible, right? We've been talking about the state of the boxing fan base. How old is it? How young is it? This sort of YouTube phenomenon has, I think, injected a real, whatever else one's complaints about the industry related to that might be, the amount of younger fans entering the space, like they've studied this. It's been significant. And then, of course, obviously Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis are not YouTubers, but in the sense that they appeal to that similar kind of demographic, and they can pull all that into boxing to watch among all the other casuals who will be there. They had this ability to rope in all these different kinds of audiences.
Well, what do we always hear? We always hear, boxing trends old. A common theme: boxing trends older. It's all your uncles that grew up watching in the 80s and 90s. But you show up in fight town cities that are burgeoning, like Minneapolis, like Brooklyn, like Southern California. How many times do we see in Carson, California, right?
Minneapolis?
Dignity Health. Minneapolis that I mentioned is, the new generations are starting. They're making new fans. And, we've done some fights with Jake Paul as a crossover influencer that brings in a new audience. But as you mentioned, Ryan Garcia, what does he have? 8-9 million Instagram followers, I'm estimating from the last time I've seen. He's long been the guy who will take the shirt off, show the tattoos and abs, sing into the microphone or whatever he has to do to build that audience and sustain them. Tank's got a completely different audience, and it's got a crossover celebrity factor in music and acting and pro sports and different sports. And, you bring all that together. I don't know if you can properly sort of gauge how big this fight could be, not just in the idea of pay-per-view metrics, which is what we always use to describe it, but how about social metrics? How about just word of mouth? This is that type of fight.
What's the last fight that was this big between two undefeated guys in boxing in their 20s? And when I say biggest fight, I mean like attraction.
It's hard to say because, in
many ways, I'm not saying that this has never been done before. Of course, I'm not saying something so silly, but this doesn't happen enough.
No, it doesn't happen enough. And I think what makes this a little unique is some of the stuff we've talked about that both at times had been criticized for the level of competition they're fighting, or when you're going to move up and fight this type of guy. Well, now they're doing it against one another. So in terms of proving things in one fight, sometimes you can get, you can go back to 1981 and, Sugar Ray Leonard, who actually had one loss at that point from the Durant series, but taking on unbeaten Tommy Hearns. And it was like, that's the Spence Crawford of that era, right? I thought the Spence Crawford of this era, if we can get them in the ring together, could be that. But Tank versus Ryan Garcia is almost just a little bit different because they're not quite on that level of Tank's won world titles in multiple divisions, secondary titles here and there, and he's certainly been a huge star. But again, this is a fight where no title at stake. It's a little different than normal. Catch, weight bout. It's more about you're taking your followers, I'm taking mine, we're bringing them in, and we're just going to go both try to prove who's the biggest, brightest young star of the moment right now that has next in this sport. I don't know if there's a direct comparison to that in terms of that unique parts of what makes this matchup, but
not any time recently. Nothing that quite stands out this way.
No, I mean, it's almost against the trend at times that we've seen in boxing, where if you have a great matchup that you want to see, that you need to see, sometimes you got to wait and build to it. This one happened earlier, happened now, and I think the sport's going to be better for it.
And I also want to make a point as well. Listen, you never want to look at what was an achievement to make this fight happen for all the reasons that it is an achievement, right? We have different promoters, we have different networks, although obviously Showtime is going to be the entity producing and carrying this, but you get the idea. Like, obviously Ryan Garcia came from another place. And so there are a lot of hurdles to make here, but I think one of the things that I really love about this fight, and again, I don't want to oversell, you make one fight, all of a sudden the boxing world's problems are solved. However, there is always a contagion. Always. When you have someone or two people in this case, and the two entities, two sides, come together to make a fight like this, it begins to at least set a little bit of a precedent or a little bit of a nudge or a little bit of a push to all of the other players out there who are having fans asking them to do the same thing, whatever scenario it may be, to cross over and, hey, make it work with this other side of the promotional aisle or whatever the difficulties are. It puts pressure on them to do that. Now, that doesn't guarantee that because you're making Garcia versus Tank Davis, all of the other fights that we want to get made that are difficult to make are going to happen. That's a little bit silly as well. But, Brian, surely you would agree. The feeling that most boxing fans have is, I'm waiting for disaster because nothing good works. Well, something good worked. It worked. That has to also work in the other direction of giving people and other fighters, promoters, whoever, a little bit more confidence, a little bit more pressure to deliver on fan and customer expectations.
Absolutely. Can't wait for this one, April 22nd. But, Luke, it's just another fight. It's a big fight, but just another in a populated calendar over the first half of this year for Showtime Championship Boxing when you look at it as a whole. And we got a lot to look forward to tonight, of course, and tonight's triple header, which begins at 9 p.m. Eastern when Subriel Matias, takes on Jeremias Ponce for the vacant IBF Junior Welterweight World Championship. We'll continue to build to that. But, Luke, looking at the heavy hitters in the month of March, one on Showtime Championship Boxing, one on Showtime Boxing International Special Edition, and, of course, that Showtime Boxing pay-per-view to close the month. But, Luke, right around the corner, March 4th, a week from tonight, Brandon Figueroa, formerly a world title holder at 122 pounds, the heartbreaker. We, of course, saw him in the fight of the year against Stephen Fulton Jr. that he wants a second time. Boxing fans want a second time. We're going to have to wait for that for now because Figueroa, we know, moved up to 126 pounds in his last fight against Carlos Castro. And he almost feels like a different fighter at this new weight class. Not drained as much. He's a bigger puncher. And he's going to take on Mark Magsayo, the former world title holder in this weight class. Upset Gary Russell Jr., lost his title in his first title defense in a close one to Ray Vargas. These two are going to match up for a vacant title at 126. Stakes couldn't be bigger, but even better than that, Luke, the promise of action between these two. How do you describe the two styles of Figueroa and Magsayo coming together?
That's a weird one. Magsayo is, I wouldn't say classic Philippine boxer, but got a lot of that in him.
He goes for it.
He absolutely goes for it. You have seen it time and time again. The more interesting one to me, and he's got an all-action style to be quite clear, but the more interesting one is to me Figueroa because he's got this, he's almost like the canopy of a tree, where he's not quite like Sebastian Fundora, who is like the apex example of this, but he is tall and rangy for the weight class, and you would think he would want to use that to his advantage. And at times, I suppose he can, but that's not what he really does. What he really does is, as you can see from the highlights here, now we're looking at Magsayo, but he gets in close and hangs over opponents. And we saw this in the Fulton fight, pushing them back into the ropes and then just making them enter this maelstrom of punches coming from all different directions, smothering them, but not himself, keeping it close, high volume. By the way, making himself vulnerable to his opponent's punching. So it's not like there's not action going both directions. There certainly is. It's just, again, we're talking tonight about the matchup, right? Styles make fights. We all have heard the old adage a million times, but it really is true. You're going to get a guy in Magsayo who doesn't take a step back, who loves to pressure forward, into another guy who likes to pressure forward and keep the fight there the whole time. It would be, okay, it would be virtually impossible for that fight to not have a ton of action. Yeah. Virtually impossible.
I caught up with Brandon Figueroa on our award-winning Showtime Sports digital series, Morning Combat, that you can catch this Tuesday. And, you know, he's heard for years, being the brother, younger brother of former world title holder Omar Figueroa Jr. We know their family style, which is give away the height and reach for the most part, get inside and just pound away to the body. One thing, though, you did see from Figueroa in that victory over Carlos Castro in his featherweight debut is he was able to fight a little bit better at times from distance, still ended up getting the knockout, looked to be a bigger puncher in the new weight class, would still put his head down and go to the body when needed. But Luke, what he talked to me in this interview was he's been working so much on just improving his skills that maybe you're always going to say when you watch a Figueroa brother fight, you know, hey man, you might want to hang back a little bit and give some distance. But if he can continue to mix in those rounds, those different looks where he can use his jab, where he can box a little bit more, it's only going to make him more dangerous. He's big for any weight class he's in. He looks like a giant at featherweight. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a very interesting test because you mentioned Magsayo doesn't take a step back, sometimes to his own detriment at certain points, right? But you know what you're going to get from him, which is promoted by Manny Pacquiao, carries that same exciting spirit of I'm going to go after and win it myself. Not going to rely on the judges, not going to try to outbox you, going to try to take it from you. I want to see the continued maturation and growth from Brandon Figueroa here, because you just say, oh, a four-pound difference, not much. The way he describes it, he was really zapping himself as a young fighter, cutting down to 122. He said, I can't do it again.
Right.
I want to rematch Fulton. I will rematch Fulton. Can't do it again at that weight class. How exciting is 126 going to be moving forward? Eventually, we might see Stephen Fulton there, but right now, this is a potential fight of the year type bout on paper. Can't wait to see that. That is March 4th, right around the corner. And Luke, a fighter that we both have enjoyed through the years from your area in the DMV, former unified junior middleweight world champion Jarrett Swift Hurd is back in the featured co-main event here March 4th. This will take place in Ontario, California at the Toyota Arena. But for Swift Hurd, lost his junior middleweight world title, of course, by upset against Julian J-Rock Williams. That was back in 2019. But we did see Jarrett Hurd come back in 2021, lost a close bout against Luis Arias, and then never returned. It's been a little bit more than a year and a half. Jarrett Swift Hurd, always with that aggressive style, but you can argue whether he needed some type of break after the 2 defeats in 3 fights. He has a very taxing style that's produced fight of the year contenders like crazy in the past, including his breakthrough unification win over Erislandy Lara, which was 2018's fight of the year. What type of expectations can we have for Jarrett Swift Hurd moving forward now that he's moved up to 160 and now that he's had almost the 2 full years to really reset and take stock of where he's at?
I talked with him a couple of times in the last 2 years, just being on the road and seeing him at different places. We covered one of his fights along the way.
On the undercard of Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul.
Correct. A fight that we had expected him to win, and he didn't. He let it get away from him. He's had a bit, since the J-Rock fight, he's just not quite, I think, performed up to his own expectations, up to his own level. Win or lose, yeah, sure, but did you fight up to your actual best ability? And I would argue that he didn't. J-Rock had a great night that night, but since then, he just hasn't been able to get right. This is a good opportunity. And I think also, BC, one of the things that he told me along the way was he was kind of playing with different styles. Like, do I always want to be the guy who's in a tremendous firefight, who has to take a ton of punches in order to get my game across? And I think he wanted to lay back from that, which is understandable. You can understand a fighter being like, maybe I should take a little less damage along the way, both for my own health as well as what the judges might see. But I think he struggled a little bit in making a new style. And so I think part of this journey he's on and getting back in this, the spotlight and getting back to a position where he's in, this is about of significance, but I mean as a headliner, right? Battling for titles. I think he has to kind of get back to the way he did it before. Maybe there are some ways to clean it up so he's not so vulnerable throughout the course of a 12-round fight should it go that long. But, you got to, to some extent, BC, you would agree, you got to dance with the one that brought you there.
Sure.
And so I think he got a little bit away from that. It cost him. He's trying to find a new path. Of course, in the last few years, he's changed trainers as well. This is going to be a real gut check moment for the state of his career and what he wants with the time remaining in it.
Just 32 years old, still that big name, former unified champion at 154, but in a new division, and he's got a 10-round test against 13-1 Jose Armando Resendiz. We'll check that out March 4th. The co-main offering, of course, as we mentioned, to Brandon Figueroa and Mark Magsayo for a vacant world title at 126 pounds. Luke, quickly to continue to populate this loaded March calendar for Showtime Boxing. March 11th is the Showtime Boxing International offering from Australia. Let's reset the stage here at 154 pounds. Your undisputed 4-belt champion, of course, is Jermell Charlo, who knocked out Brian Castano to end a disputed rivalry after a draw in their first meeting and leave no doubt as your 4-belt champion. He was supposed to welcome Tim Tszyu, the unbeaten young rising prospect, the son of the Hall of Famer Kostya Tszyu, who of course fought on Showtime so many times in big cards, the former world champion. But the injury to Jermell Charlo delayed the unification setting here in January. So what's Tim Tszyu going to do? Stay busy and welcome former world title holder Tony Harrison March 11th. It'll be in Australia on Tszyu's home turf. Luke, before we get into the potential challenge of what Tony Harrison brings as a veteran, Tim Tszyu made the U.S. debut against Terrell Gausha, the setup fight to get on a lot of people's radar if they hadn't been following him previously, and obviously get in the spot he needed to be to secure the Charlo fight. If he wins this, we're probably going to get that Charlo fight this summer. But what did you learn about Tim Tszyu's U.S. debut against Terrell Gausha?
That his style works and that this is something he can do. I think he started a little slow in the Gaucher fight, but by the time it was over, he was coasting downhill. He is able to make adjustments. He is in your face. He has a good cardiovascular conditioning. He has good pressure.
Strong for this weight class.
Strong for the weight class. He's kind of big too, not like a hulking presence, but certainly a very solid one. And this sort of goes without saying, but it is worth reminding. He's got a big name to live up to, certain expectations. I think he's tried his best to navigate that as the son of Costa Tszyu, and that can't be easy, by the way. But he has rallied the hometown crowd, the Australian fight fans, whether it's MMA or boxing. They are live, certainly. That's a fair way to put it. And listen, Harrison, I think, is a great challenge. I think we all wanted to see the Charlo fight, obviously, for reasons that don't need necessarily to be said. But this is a pretty good challenge. Harrison is slick. And a guy like Tszyu, who I do think is what do you want to say? He can be clever about battering down the door. It is still a lot of a contest of will.
Well, there's a reason why I set up the question I did about that Terrell Gaucher fight. It was last year, March of 2022, in the Armory in Minneapolis, coincidentally enough. But that wasn't the Tszyu who we had seen in Australia on the initial rise, big victories over domestic heroes like Jeff Horn to get on our radar. He was almost too aggressive, is what I'm trying to say, against Terrell Gaucher. Walked right into oncoming traffic repeatedly.
A point to prove.
A point to prove without question, trying to obviously make a splash in his U.S. debut and prove that, look, we know he's a different style than his father. His father was compact, a boxer-puncher with the amateur background, could knock you out, of course, with one big shot, as we saw against Zab Judah when they unified welterweight world titles back in the day. But a more complete different type of fighter. Tim Tszyu usually works that middle distance. Very good very good body puncher, good boxer puncher himself, different than his dad, but he was just straight ahead, blood and guts, walk you down against Gaucher. He got dropped early. He had to show us the toughness. I would have liked to see a different level of adjustments. Can we chalk it up ultimately to a little bit of nerves, trying to make a big statement? Probably. But Luke Thomas, we know against a puncher like Jermell Charlo, who we won't be fighting in this one, I don't know if he can stand that close with that risk in terms of letting your defense down to just let it go. Right. Harrison is dangerous in his own right, but the thing about Harrison that I like is he can be a chameleon and adjust to your style. Yes, we've seen him lose before at the highest level. We've seen him get stopped, but he's a sneaky good boxer. We know he upset Jermell Charlo back to win a world title, and of course the rematch was an exciting knockout finish late for Charlo when it looked like he was down on the cards. But what Tony Harrison has done since then is bounce back. And if you're not up to speed, if Tim Tszyu comes in with the wrong game plan this time around, this is the type of counter boxer, defensive counter punchering guy that can show you those elite veteran skills and hold you off. Tony Harrison also has big time pop when he needs it to discipline you. So as much as we all wanted Tszyu versus Charlo, and to some degree we hope we can still get it, right? If Tszyu passes this test, I would rather have Tszyu need to prove a little bit more from the Gaucher fight first. So if Tszyu is able to defeat Tony Harrison March 11th in Australia, I think he'll be better for it entering in such a dangerous challenge when Charlo's ready.
But you have to give him credit, right? We talked about Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. This is not exactly on the same level, certainly from the size of the fight. But whenever anyone takes on challenge that, listen, he wanted Charlo, didn't get it, and said Tony Harrison came along and they're like, okay, I accept it. I'll move forward with this challenge. I will take this on, because obviously if Harrison wins, he blows up all of the plans that Tszyu had for this division for whatever he wants with Charlo down the road. So I really commend Tszyu for moving forward with the opportunity to take on Harrison in the way that he has. And Harrison, to your point, exactly, I like it. He's to me a little bit more, to the way you described it, he can play the boxing levels a little bit. Like, what do I need to do specifically on this occasion? And he can change it up in ways that a lot of other boxers can't. Still, Tszyu is something of a battering ram when he wants to be. When he wants to be, and when he, again, once he's made some of the early adjustments, he definitely can be a battering ram. And I think he actually might have a little bit of size on Harrison as well. I wonder how much of that is going to be Tszyu pressuring Harrison into the ropes to limit and control that movement and have him forcing him to fight from there. If he can do something like that, dude, he's off to the races after that.
Tony Harrison will have a 3-inch height advantage, but you're talking about thickness. That's certainly in the area.
And also,
with
the height, you can get underneath an opponent and begin to elbow and frame them out. We've seen him be able to do this. That's a thing that's a real possibility here. So it's going to be a real key test, I think, of both guys' cardio. Also, Harrison going into enemy territory. You got to love that for Harrison. And then also just a real question of like whose footwork is going to dictate the real estate of this contest. That part I can't wait to find out.
Of course, Harrison was stopped by Jermell Charlo in that rematch in late 2019. He bounced back with a draw against Bryant Perella mid-pandemic, but the most recent victory from Tony Harrison did remind us of who he still is. That was against Sergio Garcia, and he outboxed him in April of 2022, over 10 rounds to secure this opportunity. So as much as we can say, look, if Tim Tszyu wins this, maybe he can grow from it. Maybe he'll be in a better spot to face Jermell Charlo this summer. Nothing's guaranteed here.
Risky.
Tony Harrison gets the win, which is very much in play. Could we see a Harrison-Charlo trilogy for all 4 world titles? It's a big opportunity for Tony Harrison, one of the last remaining fighters with the lineage, the connection to the old Kronk gym and the late Hall of Fame trainer Emmanuel Stewart. He recently lost Tony Harrison, his own father and trainer who passed away, but he's gotten into training himself, of course, in the corner of Alicia Baumgardner, who had some very big title victories at 130 pounds in the women's
Yeah, she's at the best she's ever been. She's at the peak of her power, so it tells you a lot about Tony in terms of understanding the game of boxing.
And who reps Detroit harder than Tony Harrison, all right?
Little Caesars.
It's probably the closest affiliation there. March, though, just keeps getting bigger and better when we look ahead to March 25th. And there's so many fights I'm excited about. Tank versus Ryan Garcia is obviously a big one, April 22nd. But March 25th offers us almost everything you would want heading up to a big Showtime pay-per-view build. It's, of course, between former 168-pound world champions David Benavidez, who is twice the WBC champion, twice lost his titles, but never in the ring. Once for a recreational drug suspension, and, of course, once for missing weight. He's back against Caleb Plant, who had his IBF title, made multiple defenses, and, of course, lost it in a valiant effort against Canelo Alvarez when Alvarez became the first 4-belt undisputed champion at 168. Canelo's looking like he might come back this spring. Maybe the rumors are this weight class, but we know he wants a rematch with Dimitri Bivol. He's got all 4 titles, but that's almost a separate thing right now. We're trying to figure out, of everyone else, who's the best. But the thing about Caleb Plant and David Benavidez is it's not just about title positioning. It's not just about a pay-per-view fight between 2 former champions with contrasting styles. Luke, there's legitimate bad blood, not the pro wrestling type bad blood. What do you know about the history between these two not liking each other very much?
I mean, it goes back a long way, even to the point where Benavidez Sr. is getting in on the action. Obviously, there's been gym confrontations. You can find all of this on the internet. I don't want to rehash all the grand details, but
I like the saucy.
Yeah, you like the sauciness. But certainly, listen, let's be real. A lot of times in fight sports, promoters want you to believe that guys don't like each other that much as a way to sell you tickets. Great news, folks. The promoter has to say nothing here. This is genuinely, and I don't say this very often. If you watch this show, you will not hear me say this very often. These two guys cannot stand each other, and they don't need anyone to convince them otherwise. This is nothing about promotional games. This is nothing about what the camera playing tricks on you. It's real. To the point, BC, that I think just last week, Caleb Plant started a website to sell merch for this particular fight, and he bought the URL davidbenavidez.com. And you can find all of Caleb Plant's gear there. And they had to be not merely separated, but they had to have a security team at the press conference. Poor Brian Custer nearly caught a stray there, standing in between them with all the punches that guys were trying to throw and pushing and everything else. They kept it civil and they did a good job. But you get the idea, like they are two dogs on a chain looking at the same bone. They are absolutely ready to maul one another. And BC, it's not just that we could make this entire conversation about how rare it is to find two guys who genuinely cannot be in the same room.
They almost got in a fight outside the press conference,
walking into
in the hotel. Afterwards, backstage, members of their teams had a dust up. I mean, you mentioned go on YouTube and just search their names. You'll see multiple near brawls inside of it.
It's the Hatfields and the McCoys. But the other point I want to make here is, okay, even if that didn't exist, and it does, the style contrast, the stakes of this one are massive. David Benavidez, Caleb Plant already got a shot at the Canelo sweepstakes, and he actually performed pretty well, but in the end, Canelo was too good. David Benavidez hasn't had that yet. And he wants it. He wants to get back. He wants to be the guy that everyone remembers. Oh, remember that guy who like absolutely pieced up Porky Medina? He can do that. He can do that at the highest levels.
Oh, you mean his 13-punch combination knockout?
Yes.
Yeah.
The point he wants to make, though, is he wants, to your point about losing on the titles on the scales, there's just been a couple of hiccups with David Benavidez to the early start of his supposed to be illustrious
he won a world
career.
title at age 20. He was so young.
He's been ahead of the game in many ways, but then behind it in others. Now you've got an opponent where you don't need any motivation to beat him, and if you do, it really sets you up in that 168-pound division. We'll see what happens with Canelo.
Let's talk about this.
I'm just pointing out, also for Caleb Plant, massive win. If he can get this over a heated, talented rival, you gotta love this one.
So this has all the big fight feels that are necessary. Las Vegas, I mentioned March 25th, Showtime pay-per-view. But when you get a big fight like this, you get the promotional vehicle, the documentary pre-fight series going, all access on Showtime. Benavidez versus Plant, episode 1. Mark your calendars, March 10th on Showtime. We talked about the sauciness. We talked about them almost coming to blows at the press conference. You'll get the behind the scenes of that. And, if you want Showtime, how about 30 days free right now by going to Showtime.com? You're going to need it in March. But Luke, to continue on Plant Benavidez here as we build toward the start of tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing triple header, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to have one more fight for you here on the Showtime Boxing Countdown shortly. Luke, we said we can put aside the trash talk. You can put aside the former title holder. Let's talk about this division as a whole and what this fight represents. Canelo Alvarez is the biggest star in the sport, arguably, and your 4-belt champion at the moment. You got unbeaten David Merrill Jr., who has a secondary title and is fighting in Minneapolis and looking to get big names. There's the rumors and the potential of a WBC middleweight champion, Jermall Charlo, moving up. We just saw Demetrius Andrade, a 2-division title holder, make his super middleweight and PBC debuts. Who am I missing here? You got Plant, you got Benavidez. There's always the threat of other big names parachuting in. Will Triple G one day move up to 68? My point is super middleweight right now. You know, what's boxing's recent history, right? Heavyweight is the glamour division, right? It's not always there. Right now we're going through a renaissance era, but it can go up and down. Welterweight is your consistent money and pay-per-view division. 168 moving forward. Watch out. Watch out when we're talking about big-time name talent, former champions coming together. And what did Caleb Plant do to raise his stakes in your eyes that last time out? When he took on a former champion in Anthony Durrell, his first fight with new trainer Stephen Breadman Edwards, he may have delivered the knockout of the year last year.
He certainly did.
And what has that done to his confidence is really the key question here.
Yeah, I mean, he has, I don't think, ever lacked confidence, but I think it let him know that when that the place he's in his career right now, if he does what he's supposed to, I think he believes he just simply cannot be stopped. He has all of the slickness already. Like, you already knew that Caleb Plant was a slickster, and then Durrell's a little bit longer in the tooth in terms of his age. But to show that kind of, yes, a sort of decent power, but I think it was the surprise. Obviously, Durrell did not see the punch coming, did not expect it, and ate every ounce of it. We just saw something like that here on the prelims, and so he got dusted off for it. But then, of course, there was that gravedigger celebration. To me, BC, Caleb Plant is absolutely not deterred in any way by whatever message he was supposed to be after the loss to Canelo. I think he really believes if he got another shot at Canelo, he would win. I think he believes in his abilities to beat any boxer in this division on the right night. And I think also, BC, we haven't talked about this ever with Caleb Plant, he loves sticking it in people's faces. He loves proving them wrong, does he not? He even brought the fact that there was a bit of a racial angle, at least a supposed one, with his previous opponent, not with David Benavidez. He hasn't really engaged in that, although they've engaged in every other manner of character assassination. But the point I'm trying to make here is he loves when all these guys say that Caleb Plant can't do something, isn't that guy, can't rise to the occasion, and then he goes and does it. Nothing brings him more satisfaction. You get all of that if you beat David Benavidez.
He just feels
then some.
Plant just looks like a different fighter the way he carries himself since joining forces with a new trainer, which can rekindle something in him. He's, of course, Caleb Plant has always been heavily motivated, intense in his preparation, but there's just this extra level of I don't know, feeling like, hey, I've got a secret weapon and I'll bring it out. We know he can box slickly, but what if he can continue to be a puncher? Luke, what you love about this matchup, contrast of style-wise, is that flip side. How would you describe what David Benavidez does great?
He's a machine gun. He's a machine gun. He has He's lengthy. He has hand speed. He has combination punching. He has good power. He has a good chin. He has good command of range. I will say, obviously, he does sometimes tend to walk into stuff by virtue of going square at times. If you look at some tape study on him, you'll see some of that. But in general, the thing that makes him terrifying, BC, is the big power punching, the pressure, the volume, the hand speed, the combinations. There's just this hail of firepower in your face at all times when you're going up against a guy like David Benavidez, and of course, given the length and everything else, it's just a lot to deal with. So
he's got a gas tank for a big guy.
Gas tank. That's what I mean. But you can't throw volume like that unless you have a gas tank. And by the way, unless you also believe in your power.
Sure.
Two guys who are supremely confident that both guys are convinced that their opponents are absolute frauds, and they're going to show it to you. And only one of them can be right. We're going to find out.
As much as we can talk about Caleb Plant's further refined eye of the tiger that he's showing, to steal an old school Rocky reference, who fights nastier or meaner than David Benavidez, especially when he's able to go downhill, corner you, and just pile on that volume and the power punching. This should be a treat come March 25th in Las Vegas.
Also, while Caleb Plant's a little bit of a slickster and then can find openings and move, and he's like a ghost in there sometimes, man, David Benavidez is he's a bully. He's a bully. He will walk you down. Dude, that's one of the most important parts to understand about David Benavidez. He will absolutely just walk you down. Caleb Plant, you got to go find sometimes because he likes that Philly shell. He likes to roll and move and get out of the way and touch and go. Nah, not David Benavidez. To your point, he is downhill. He is trying to find you. He's Jason Voorhees at the summer camp, walking through the cornfield, ready with the machete to do work. But obviously, he's a very skilled boxer, and when he finds you, man, it is a lot to deal with.
We're going to have one more fight for you at the top of the hour to close out this Showtime Boxing Countdown preliminary action. It's going to come in the welterweight division as Kudratillo Abdukakharov takes on Vashon Owens. But Luke Thomas, we are building toward the crown jewel of this evening at the Armory in Minneapolis, and that's the main event of tonight's Showtime Championship Boxing triple header. 9 p.m. start in the East, 6 p.m. out West. Talking about a vacant IBF junior welterweight world title, 140 pounds, when Subriel Matias of Puerto Rico takes on Jeremias Ponce, who is making his U.S. debut here from Argentina. Luke, now would be the time to talk about this incredible journey that Subriel Matias has taken to get to this point. He comes from Puerto Rico, but there's been no shortage of hiccups, detours, some self-inflicted along the way.
Sure.
In 2012, he was stabbed in the shoulder blades during an altercation outside of the ring. He then was arrested and served jail time for selling drugs. He was in jail through 2015. Just a few months after that, he started his pro career. But when we talk about hiccups, his 2019 victory over Maxim Dadashev, which happened in Oxon Hill, Maryland.
Right. I used to live in Oxon Hill.
3 days after Matias scored a decision victory, a brain injury led to the early death of Maxim Dadashev. How many times have we seen the real life brutality in the sport and the danger, and not just what it can do to somebody on the wrong end of it physically, and certainly in this case to Dadashev, but for the fighter who inflicts it.
Right.
Not something that you easily can bounce back from. But here is Subriel Matias entering the biggest fight of his career with a title on the line. You got to be a certain level of mental toughness to get through everything he has.
And let's add another layer of complication to everything that's already happened in his life. And again, by the way, he acknowledges that he's made mistakes. He acknowledges that he had to pay for sins of the past. He doesn't run from it. He accepts it. But just to add the difficulty to it, he is now training in Mexico, even though he is of Puerto Rican heritage, and he's been away from his kids for 9 months. 9 months heading into this contest. He's been away from his 3 girls. BC, I've been away from my daughter for 9 minutes tonight, and I don't really care for it. It's not a lot of fun to do that for a month after.
I mean, that's old school Marvin Hagler stuff.
Right. Well, let's be clear. That means you're missing birthdays. That means you're missing anything related to perhaps your church or your local community. Like, you're missing all the big stuff to chase a dream. That means there is only one outcome tonight that is acceptable to Subriel Matias. It is victory. Victory is the only thing that is acceptable tonight. You cannot leave your kids, and I'm sure he's saying this to himself. I'm not lecturing him, but I'm saying his internal dialogue has to be, you are not allowed to leave your family and come home with anything other than a W tonight. He is going to be motivated, but he's going to need it because the gentleman from Argentina is undefeated, doesn't know how to lose, has more experience, a huge volume puncher himself. It's a tough test in both directions.
I got a good stat to talk to you in a second about that volume punching, but to close out on Subriel Matias, and something we mentioned off the top, he's 18-1 with 18 KOs. You might want to know what that loss was. It was a 2019 decision loss to Petro Zananian, of which Matias went down for the first time in his career and ended up taking, it was a stoppage loss in the 9th round. He got knocked down and ended up getting stopped. They had the rematch in January of 2022. And we saw another knockout as Matias ran that back and avenged his only career defeat. Going now 18-1 with 18 KOs, he's one of 4 active fighters that are currently ranked by The Ring that have had victories all by knockout of every single one. Luke, let's talk about the company he's with. Artur Beterbiev, your light heavyweight unified champion. You're talking about an unbeaten welterweight rising prospect, could be future star in Virgil Ortiz Jr., and then another unbeaten fighter at 140 pounds in Gary Antoine Russell, the younger brother of former featherweight champion Gary Russell Jr. So no shortage of great company when we're talking about the power of Subriel Matias. But as we bring in his opponent, and we're talking about Jeremias Ponce from Argentina, 30-0 with 20 KOs, how about this? According to CompuBox, the junior welterweight average for punches thrown per round, 57.5.
Okay.
Subriel Matias averages 86.5 punches thrown per round, nearly 30 more. And Ponce, not too bad himself, 75.8.
Right.
So we're talking about 2 volume guys, 2 guys with a great track road and history there of knocking people out. They're going to let their hands go. They both throw a high percentage of power punches. This could be a track meet, and you have to love when you add in the hunger of both fighters. This could be a track meet from the standpoint of letting your hands go and fighting at a very high speed and a high pace. But don't let that trick you into the idea that this is going to be touch and go.
No, it's not going to be. It's going to be a lot of touching, not too much going.
Not too much going in that regard. But how many times have we seen this before from Jeremias Ponce's own promoter, the great Marcos Maidana, the former multi-division world champion, where when Maidana first came in and pulled the upset over Victor Ortiz, it's like, who's this guy? I brought up in the past when Ricardo Torres came undefeated from Colombia and fought Miguel Cotto. It's like, who's this guy? Well, we found out who that guy was in both instances in which Maidana scored that big upset and went on a long run with victories over Adrian Broner and, of course, the 2 pay-per-view fights with Floyd Mayweather. And the same on the side of Ricardo Torres, losing a close one in 2005 to Miguel Cotto, but making a big mark, going on to win a world title. A lot of pressure on Jeremias Ponce in his U.S. debut here in a title fight, but this is like Matias, something he's been working for his whole career to get to this level.
The tape on him is pretty exciting to the point that BC raised. We just don't know how he's going to do against some of the more seasoned opposition. We'll get a taste of that tonight. We'll see how it goes. But if you just watch him, he is so fun for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to point out one, and I really want you to pay attention to this when you watch this evening. He is a vicious, unrelenting, consistent, and absolutely damaging body attacker. He will go to the body over and over and over again. It doesn't matter the stance of the opponent. It doesn't matter their... obviously, he has a range of different shots he uses depending on where they are related to him and where he is positioned to them. But the point I'm trying to make here is it doesn't matter your stance, doesn't matter your strategy. He consistently goes to it over and over and over and over again. And then, of course, uses that for all the dividends that it pays. When it slows them down, when it transfers their defense and leaves open the head, then he will go to that. So you add in the fact that he's already punching a lot, plus he actually digs heavy to the body. You have to love it. But BC, to me, we haven't talked about this. It's one thing I really want to make sure we talk about in the broadcast. The central tension in this fight, as best I can tell, yes, of course, is going to be positioning, right? Who's leading who's following, and what role that plays. But in terms of particular weapons, I think that the left and right hook to the body for Ponce is his best weapon, in particular the left hook. And I actually feel to the body. And I actually feel like the left hook upstairs for Matias is a sensational weapon. Why? If you actually watch these guys, you can see both of them jab at range. Ponce needs to do that a little bit more. He doesn't have the same kind of trajectory he needs to get the full authority in all the different spaces. That is not the case with Matias. Matias, yes, he can, if given just the appropriate distance, throw a beautiful looking technical left hook. However, he can throw it at all different ranges, leaping, and even super in tight in ways you would never imagine that it would land with authority, and it does over and over again. He can squeeze it and stab it in all these corners that just never exist for other boxers, and we talked about it earlier, BC. He throws a ton of volume, and he's got a lot of power. What is Ponce going to do about the left hook of Matias? What is Matias going to do about the body punching of Ponce? Whoever figures that one out, probably going to win.
The quote from Ponce heading into this fight that I identified here is, I always look for the knockout, and I try to leave nothing to chance. That's certainly the attitude that his opponent, Subriel Matias, brings in. But for Ponce, this may be his U.S. debut. It may be a step up in competition, all true. But how he got here, you want to talk about his biggest win, 3 fights ago, June of 2021. He went on the road to Newcastle, England, was an underdog against local favorite Louis Ritson. And that turned out to be a 10th round upset knockout win for Jeremias Ponce. Luke, that was a crazy ending in which the towel was thrown in from Louis Ritson's father in the 10th round.
Ref ignored it.
Referee Steve Gray took the towel, threw it out. It's referee's discretion. Needed 2 more knockdowns in that round before the fight ultimately got closed. But that was the big breakthrough moment for Jeremias Ponce tonight. Gives him the opportunity to change his life. I mentioned he could become the 6th Argentine-born fighter to win a world title at 140 pounds. On the flip side, for Subriel Matias, he can become the 6th male from Puerto Rico to win a world title at 140 and 7th overall. Let me read you the names here of the company he can join.
Are they prestigious names?
At 140-pound champions from the island of Puerto Rico: Wilfred Benavidez, Hector Macho Camacho, Miguel Cotto, Edwin Rosario, Carlos Ortiz, and Amanda Serrano.
Wow.
So no shortage of potential Puerto Rican royalty here that Matias can add his name to. 18-1 with 18 KOs, welcoming the 30-0 Jeremias Ponce. We're just a couple minutes out from our final bout here, our featured preliminary bout to wrap up our triple header here on the Showtime Boxing Countdown Show. It's going to be in the welterweight division. One loss, Kudratillo Abdukakharov looking to get back in the win column as he welcomes Vashon Owens in a welterweight tilt. Closing in at the start of tonight's, of course, triple header, top of the hour at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 in the West. You see the crowd filling in there at the Armory in Minneapolis. The young and radiant Miguel Flores, of course, with the microphone there in the middle, the brother of Ray Flores, our often colleague here in these parts in the PBC and Showtime boxing landscape. This will be our featured bout as we head into tonight's triple header. And Luke, quickly, when we talk about this co-main event and the return of Jamal James, he's going to take on 2016 Argentine Olympian Alberto Palmetta. Jamal James has a volume style. We know him not as a knockout puncher, but more can work behind that big jab. He's going to have a 7-inch height advantage here over his opponent, Alberto Palmetta. So it's going to be interesting to see when you get the sort of physical contrast on that level.
Look at the picture there.
Look at the size difference between them right there.
Not quite Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but certainly a difference in body type, to be clear.
Great promoter Samson Lukowitz in the middle there. Always got the gold on.
And by the way, you know, the hometown guy who was interviewed, I think Brian Custer interviewed him yesterday, and he just seemed to be in a good space. There's the picture right there. He seemed to be in a great space mentally heading into this one, despite all the difficulty and time off and everything else. He just seems like this is the right fight at the right moment for him, is sort of the way he seemed to describe it. I'm curious to see if he can pull it off tonight. Tough task.
Yeah, Jamal James fighting a southpaw for just the 2nd time in his career. The last time that happened, go back to 2019 against Antonio DeMarco, in which they put on a little surprise war. Ended up being a decision win in the favor of Jamal James. But even though Jamal James not known as a big puncher, he makes action fights. He lets his hands go. There's your look inside the ring, though. We talk about Jamal James being from Minneapolis. So is Vashon Owens in the white robe. He's in our featured Showtime Boxing Countdown welterweight tilt, and that is the Uzbek-born Kudratillo Abdukakharov. Should be a good one, Luke.
He sits at 18-1. Owens 13-3. This one is a welterweight contest, as you indicated.
Abdukakharov, born in Uzbekistan, now fights out of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, 29 years old. At 18-1, he's fresh off the only defeat of his career, a 10-round unanimous decision loss to rising prospect Cody Crowley, who improved to 20-0 in that fight. That, of course, was in December of 2021. Abdukakharov once beat former welterweight world title holder Luis Collazo in 2019. Look to continue to build his record here against local product Vashon Owens of Minneapolis. Luke, of the 16 pro fights for Owens, 7 coming in the Armory tonight will be the 8th.
Little hometown advantage.
pink trucks for Vashon Owens there, the southpaw, going back into the orthodox stance.
Yeah, but it's already switching stances. Not my favorite thing to do.
He's a righty by default here. He can sometimes float, though, as you see.
They're both going back and forth now.
Good jab from Owens from the southpaw stance.
Again, what you want to pay attention to with the stance switch is, where do they switch? Do they switch through combination, or do they switch in front of their opponent? And more to the point, if they do have opposite stance who is using lead foot positioning, you do not always have to have dominant outside foot positioning. Lead on the inside can be valuable just the same.
Both fighters, by the way, are considered orthodox fighters, but you're already seeing just constant floating and switching, looking to change their looks up. Both with good amateur backgrounds. Vashon Owens, a 4-time Minnesota Golden Gloves champion with a record of 105-17 in the amateur ranks. And Abdu Kakarov, he had 280 victories, was a 4-time national champion in Uzbekistan, but never went on to compete for them internationally, ended up turning pro.
By the way, not much of a feeling out period at all. These two getting right after it.
See, they have a similar amount of pro bouts coming in, 19 for Abdu Kakarov, 16 for Owens, but Abdu Kakarov nearly double the pro round experience. Some of that is that power that you see under Vashon Owens' record, 13-3, but 12 KOs and 13 wins.
Yeah, Abdu Kakarov switching in both ways, switching on the outside that his opponent can see him do it, and then through combination as well.
Owens not afraid to put his punches together here.
Yeah, Abdu Kakarov planting his feet and then trying to use trunk movement, but Owens jabbing his way around it.
Fighting at very close range here in the first round. This will be a 10-round bout in the 147-pound division.
We can't quite say yet, but it looks like what... Let's see here. It looks like what Abdu Kakarov is trying is that whatever direction he begins to move... that's not quite true, no. I was going to say he was trying to move no matter where into his power side, but that's not the case.
Counter right hand from Abdu Kakarov. Both fighters countering effectively with the right. Feeling out process right off the bat as they let their punches go here. Good first round.
Great combination from Abdu Kakarov to end the frame there. What would you say, BC? You think Abdu Kakarov took it?
You certainly could debate it either way, as both had their moments. Was he a little bit busier, established that jab a little bit more? It certainly could make the argument there. So Abdu Kakarov, overall, maybe you could say has the better experience as a pro, but his opponent here, no shortage of big names on his resume, meaning Vashon Owens. And here's a look back at some of the action in round one.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of chasing there a little bit, but he was leading with the left hand and then just didn't back out quick enough, and his opponent, Owens, was able to counteract. Parries the jab, then he triples it up, and then as you can see here, he follows Abdu Kakarov as he tries to use trunk movement around. That's good work from Owens.
Owens, 31 years old. He's fresh off a loss against Alberto Puello, the unbeaten fighter who will be taking on Rolly Romero in April for a 140-pound title.
That'll be a normal press conference.
Puello won the vacant WBA title in his next fight after defeating Vashon Owens. That came in December of 2021. So a long layoff here for Vashon Owens that he's snapping back in his home city. I talked about Vashon Owens' experience. You look at his two other defeats, Cordell Booker, a name we know well, and Sebastian Fundora had a stoppage victory over Vashon Owens in this very ring in April of 2018.
Good defense there from Owens, keeping his hand up and moving it as needed to block a lot of the attacks from the left side. You see, when they switch like that right in front of their opponent, if you're far enough away, the idea is that they can't leap into range and get you. But when you switch, if you're not careful and you don't do it quick enough, I've had many boxers tell me they love it when opponents do that because they can time the actual switch and you're square right in the middle of it and they can pop you for it. So far hasn't happened, but the way in which Abdu Kakarov is switching could lead to that if he's not careful. And he puts together a great three-punch combination with a delayed timing on the final left hand.
The right hand from Owens to regain some respect. I don't know if you can see it in terms of the eye test, but Owens' reach 6 inches longer on paper than Abdukakhorov.
If you watch, Abdukakhorov is at times punching and then posting on the shoulder to prevent some of that. It's been mixed success, but he's trying it. You can see he's doubling up on the jab to try and negotiate that distance. So he's aware and he's got some tactics. We'll see how successful they are as the fight continues.
No matter how you have it scored through a round and a half, impressed by the hometown fighter Vashon Owens, bringing the fight to Abdukakhorov right off the start, using that reach, trying to surprise him with clean punches.
Owens is doing a good job countering Abdukakhorov when he extends too far on his power punch.
And Owens can keep up the mentality here of the spoiler. Try to send Abdukakhorov to his second straight defeat. Both fighters returning for the first time since December of 2021.
It's a better round for Owens for me.
Certainly can see from the body language how confident he is each time he's able to build behind that jab. Final 10 seconds of round 2. Our featured attraction in the welterweight division. 10 rounds here. And Abdukakhorov and Owens. Big right hand late from the Uzbek.
I'm not sure I heard the bell.
Slipped in there. 2 rounds complete. You'd have to say, Luke, of our 3 fights on this evening's preliminary card, this the best back and forth action we've seen up to this point.
I mean, I think the last 2 fights before this, we called like 5 seconds of action. Here we go.
Spectacular finish, of course, earlier from Mikkel Spencer. But here's the pictures from round 2. Better round for Vashon Owens, it seemed like. As he loops around with the right hand. Good counter shots against the hard-charging Abdukakhorov.
Yeah, they're both kind of, I mean, they're just swinging there right in front of each other, quite candidly. At that stage of the fight, they're just exchanging. But on the outside, they're trying to pick their entries, trying to figure out exactly what the best way is and what stance is going to yield the most results. So far, they haven't quite figured it out.
Certainly wouldn't call Abdukakhorov's countering textbook from the idea of technique, but those right hands are loopy, but they get there. They certainly do.
Owens showing several signals that he's tired of being punched in the head.
For as much as they've done switching back and forth, Luke, the orthodox stance for one Vashon Owens seems to be the most productive behind that jab form.
Yeah, he's forcing a lot of changes, and now he's leading with center ring, putting Abdukakhorov on the back foot, but he's still kind of waiting for Abdukakhorov to go first, and that's tripping him up a little bit. He's got to find ways to feint or fake a reaction and then use that to go second.
Pressure of Vashon Owens forcing Abdukakhorov back to the ropes here in round 3. The counter right hand from Owens as they stand and punch with each other.
A little bit of a clash of heads.
They have 3 defeats coming in, but Vashon Owens fighting like a very confident veteran here. They have the hand speed advantage, and we talked about that length, working behind that big jab, 73.5-inch reach.
Pace has slowed a little bit here in the third. I think as both guys are trying not to walk into the obvious stuff and still getting a nice combination there from Owens.
Certainly having the edge in speed and accuracy, which is potentially explainable of why Abdukakhorov's output has gone down. That big jab of Owens continues to find him first.
But you see, both guys are kind of jousting. Like neither is faking or feinting an opening. They're just going. See that? They're just going. They're not using any kind of shoulder or foot or hip feint to draw reaction and then go more safely. And as a consequence, both are getting hit a little bit more.
Final 20 seconds of round 3. This welterweight featured attraction, wild right-hand lead from Abdukakhorov comes up empty.
I think Owens mocking the punching mechanics of Abdukakhorov.
Very similar to the veteran Eric Morales against Danny Garcia in their first meeting in Texas many years ago. Good action to close once again, but it seems like Vashon Owens in a little bit of a groove here through 3 rounds.
A little bit slicker, a little bit more accurate. Certainly Abdukakhorov landing, though, just by virtue of how open Owens is and the overall amount of punches he's throwing. He's kind of leaping into range there. Owens doing a pretty good job, as you can see, getting out of the way of most of that or deflecting or blocking it. Jabs on point.
He's had better head movement, better technique. But as awkward and unorthodox as some of those looping punches from Abdukakhorov are, those are the type of punches that can catch you when you don't expect them.
Very responsive in the corner and talking to his corner.
Like we mentioned, tonight's main eventer, Jeremias Ponce from Argentina, promoted by Marcos Maidana. Was there an elite fighter who ever did it better from Maidana from the standpoint of taking the unorthodox, taking the bizarre, the corkscrew punches, and making them work? How many times did you see in that first meeting when Maidana fought Floyd Mayweather, and he was able to pin him to the ropes with the threat of those airborne shots from different angles?
Manuel Augustus has a claim as being a very good unorthodox
drunken master.
fighter.
Could switch stances and dance with the best of them.
He was interesting.
Round 4 here between welterweights. Good quick jab from Vashon Owens with a right hand behind it. Very least good matchmaking in this featured welterweight attraction as Vashon Owens is giving Abdukakhorov all he can deal with in terms of the length and the speed of these punches.
Abdukakhorov a little bit more physical when they tie up like this. Now, it didn't matter because the referee intervened, but pay attention to it. He seems to be unwilling to, if in general, invite referee contact to separate, and he is forcing a separation like this. The referee got involved. But pay attention, he likes to punch through all of that by getting the referee kind of away.
See if Abdukakhorov can begin to use his physicality better inside to slow Owens down. Neither fighter committing to the body much here as we continue to trade jabs.
Abdukakhorov was doing it earlier, you're right, but he's gotten away from it this round.
Both fighters seem to also have gone away from the southpaw switching that they did in the opening round.
Also, I got to say, again, it could be part of the game plan to bait him into a trap like that and make him overcommit, but you're not seeing a lot of ring cutting from Owens. Kind of just sort of waiting in center position. And there's a little bit of pushing back there. But you see how he's letting him escape to either side? He's not really kind of cornering him. And now he's along the same rope line as him, right? No longer, he moves back to center there, but he was momentarily giving away positions. Also turning away from Abdukakhorov and kind of taking some big punches for it.
Abdukakhorov had turned southpaw before that. Landed big shots as Owens was slow and covering up. Almost turned to the side opposite Abdukakhorov, but here's Vashon Owens looking to make that sequence up as he walks him down. Big left hand from Abdukakhorov.
2 of them got through.
Hear the crowd buzzing there at the Armory in Minneapolis. Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas on the call here. Showtime Boxing Countdown. Our final bout of 3 featured preliminary fights. This one in the welterweight division, and a competitive start.
I think Owens is waiting around a little bit too much. He's jabbing here. I like this a little bit better. That's a nice right hand as he moves to his own right. And you can see him switching stances. That's another right. Here I am criticizing him.
The speed is a problem for Abdukakhorov. Good finish for Owens after it was the Uzbek fighter who had big moments there at the end of that round.
Yeah, for sure. He may have stolen the round. I was going to say, prior to that last push, he was kind of waiting around a little bit too much. I think I would love to see him, to your point, jab a little consistently to the body. He fakes up to the top and can't quite convert. Good jabs there. Triple jab. It's an attempt, kind of a left hook, and he passes him by. There's the other one. Then he grabs the head and kind of frames, and then he turns away. Listen, folks, you could say that's dirty, but the rules are what the rules are. Protect yourself at all times. The referee did not intervene. You cannot turn your back like that, even if you feel like the other person shouldn't be throwing.
Like, you turn your back away from a fighter, you can be stopped. The fight can end right there.
Right.
Under the true jurisdiction of needing to defend yourself and remain competent. But 4 rounds complete here in this spirited welterweight featured fight. See who can make the adjustments. Both looking to bounce back from recent defeats. Both coming off of layoffs lasting longer than 1 year. As you can see, letting their hands go on the inside. Sharp right-hand counter from Vashon Owens in the pink trunks.
Credit to both fighters for fighting through the clinch there and not letting the referee decide that. So here's Owens backing him up with jabs again. Let's see what he can convert with it.
Each time Abdukakharov does experiment with southpaw, it tends to slow down that jab of Owens. The pace slows here in the first minute of round 5.
But if you're Owens, you probably like this style a little bit better. It's still very close, and he is hardly running away with it. But this is probably a more preferable option than to some kind of rock'em sock'em, trade him in close bout.
Owens doing a good job of moving with the punches. Even as Abdukakharov is landing, he's able to lessen some of that blow by moving with the punches and moving away from him.
I gotta say though, one thing I'm seeing from Owens here, you see how he's single-shotting everything? Right? He's kind of putting a punch here, a punch there. I would like to see him begin to put a little bit more 1-2, 1-2-3, put combinations together. If you just notice, Abdukakharov...
Big right hand from Owens.
Right. If you just notice, he kind of stays where he's at for the most part, especially in this stage of the fight, right, where he's not moving as much. Throwing in some body punches, to your point, could do Owens wonders.
Owens still the aggressor. Very confident posture. Good little pockets of two-way punching, as we've seen each round here.
Yeah, I got to say, though, Owens is just letting Abdukakharov escape off the ropes. I would love for him to be a little bit more present about cornering the options. Nice right hand from Abdukakharov. You see that? He put it in his face, held it as a frame, and then threw the power hand behind it, the right hand. Great work.
Which is, Vashon Owens has showed us what appears to be a speed advantage. The power advantage of terms of punches moving visually their opponents has been in the direction of Abdukakharov. The 29-year-old from Uzbekistan. He calls himself the Punisher.
Yeah, again, Owens, I think for my liking, waiting around a little too long and single-shotting. He doubles it there but doesn't put anything else behind it with the right hand. You see that? How he threw a single punch and then paid for it right afterwards. You got to put a couple of them together to deter him from doing that.
I think he's reluctant to do that each time Abdukakharov goes southpaw because of how much it could leave him open for that left cross. Quick hands there from Owens to try to finish the wrong strong.
Abdukakharov may have taken that one. It's close. It's a close, competitive fight.
Both fighters having their moments there in that round 5. We've seen that the last couple rounds in terms of trying to decide for the 3 judges ringside, should this go the full 10-round distance? What did you prefer? Here's a look back at what we saw there in round 5.
Nice right hand as he moved back there from Owens. But that's a beautiful right hand there from Abdukakharov. And this is where he posted, eats a body shot. And this is what I mean about letting Abdukakharov retake center like that. I would just like to see him make him work, because also it makes them work more, right? If they have to constantly circle the perimeter of the ring, it's just literally more labor. I would like to see him try.
Owens has the edge in overall visible tattoos compared to Abdukakharov.
He certainly does, but who knows? Who knows, BC?
Round 6, welterweights. Our featured preliminary bout. Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas on the call with you. Top of the hour, of course, 9 p.m. Eastern is the start. The Showtime Championship Boxing triple header.
So I misunderstood. There are times when Owens is complaining about shots to the back of the head, and then each round he starts by patting himself on the top of the head, which I now think is unrelated to those other claims.
Maybe complaining about being held down. Good leaping left hook from Abdukakharov.
He's getting off first, right? I mean, who's the one that's going here? He's the one that's going, at least in that particular moment. Here's another one with Owens walking right into a punch.
Owens also was able, though, to get off that lead right hand that stung Abdukakharov. That shot's going to be there each time Kudratillo goes to that southpaw stance.
You see, after Owens throws the right, he doesn't move. So Kakharov just waits for it and then throws a right just behind it and lands cleanly. He's done it 2 times in this round already. There he is. You see him framing? He did the old Isak Cruz, BC. We talk about it all the time, where he gets real low and then throws up over the top of his own shoulder. He just did it framing off the jab and then throwing the big overhand just behind it while Owens is waiting for it.
Abdukakharov turned pro in 2015, 280 amateur victories. Born in Uzbekistan, but as we mentioned, fighting out of Kuala Lumpur. Malaysia sounds like a nice vacation spot, Luke.
It's a long flight.
I just survived London. I'm building up. I'm building up.
I was about to say, it's about 2 of those. But you're probably right. I would love to go.
Back to southpaw for Abdukakharov. An uppercut on the inside from Owens.
It looks to me at this point, too, Abdukakharov's just doing more work.
Last couple rounds, I'd agree with you.
Right. Not the totality of the fight, but certainly of recent.
Owens commanding that center of the ring, but as Luke mentioned, not doing a great job cutting off Abdukakharov and keeping him cornered like right now.
That was a little bit better. He threw that left hook that forced him right. That's good, but then he opens him up so he can retake center. That's the problem.
Owens nods his head after 2 straight lead right hands against the southpaw stance.
Right, I should say that while I'm criticizing that, he's landing big punches. Uh-oh, what happened here?
Away. Could be an eye poke. Referee
or headbutt?
Let's fight. Seemed to be an accidental foul of some kind between the two.
See, I don't know what he does that if he's complaining about shots to the top of the head or the back of the head. He's doing it constantly. Let's see this.
He will continue to have his hands full here.
Oh, they're trading there, basically just power shots. Pushing through, exiting off the right hook.
Kakharov has made some nice adjustments in recent rounds. He slow down the output of his opponent and make this more competitive.
Both of them often throw punches off balance, though. They don't always have their feet underneath them, and they kind of reach past themselves as they try to throw. Again, this is where cornering comes into play, right? Because if they can't zoom past at an angle, you don't have to try and reach with your punches in those particular ways.
Very animated expressions on the face there of Vashon Owens in between rounds. Couldn't tell if he was singing the song that was overplayed in the arena.
I doubt that.
If he was having a fun moment with his trainer. Vashon Owens, a native of Minneapolis. We talked about at the famous historic armory there. Get some of the best fight fans in all of boxing, certainly in the U.S.
Main card hasn't even started. It's starting to look full.
How they roll in Minneapolis. Round 7 in this welterweight featured attraction.
What a counter jab from Abdukakharov. Perfectly timed. Again, he's not punching with Owens. He's waiting just a split second behind him.
Well, he's awkward. He's just a little bit off the normal timing and rhythm of most opponents. And as much as he can be telegraphing his right hand at times, because that right hand comes on a delay, he can find a home for it. He's very awkward to deal with. Despite that big amateur background, some of this rawness is working into the favor of Abdukakharov. Something to continue to watch for Vashon Owens. His production has gone down, and I can't echo it enough. Each time Abdul Kakarov goes southpaw, that jab from Owens from the orthodox stance just tends to disappear completely.
I just feel like as a general condition, Owens is giving Abdul Kakarov too much space. There's just look at this. He has too much space to escape the corner, too much space to change stance, too much space to roam and switch and pull you into his punches.
3-punch combination from Vashon Owens. These are the areas he needs to step up the gas on the pedal there when he's got Abdul Kakarov cornered and he's got him pinned against the ropes. Can he make him pay?
This is better.
Jab to the body from Vashon Owens, something we certainly haven't seen enough of between these two. Good spirited fight, and the right hand caught Abdul Kakarov off guard. Each time he goes southpaw, you see the opening for that right hand lead from Owens. Be interesting if this one goes the distance, how the judges are seeing these very close rounds in which they're almost taking turns. You have 20 seconds of success. I'll come back while you rest.
You know, give credit to Abdul Kakarov for his ring generalship, right? It's a lot of work to move as much as he has, but more to the point, even if you want to say Owens is letting him out, he's the one initiating underneath the punches to then retake center. It's his initiative that's causing it. That's good work from him. Right, you see how Abdul Kakarov goes just a split second behind Owens. That is directly intentional in some of these exchanges. It's where Owens has the most vulnerability. He's got it, in this particular case, he could walk into something, as you see he can do there.
7 rounds complete between welterweights. A spirited back and forth action here. Vashon Owens in the pink trunks. Kudratillo Abdul Kakarov across from him.
Kudratillo?
Kudratillo.
I don't think he's from Latin America. I could be wrong.
Here's a look back at the action here in round 7 as I work on my pronunciation skills.
Hey, look, we all are. Let he who's without sin cast the first stone. Good left hand over the top there from Abdul Kakarov. And then getting out of the way of some of these counters. Abdul Kakarov setting the terms, then getting out of the way of the secondary follow-up. It's just great work by him. And again, I want to go back. Look at how many times he escapes the corner and moves the fight back to the center for himself. He can't keep it because obviously Owens is marching into him, and that makes it tough. But he's doing pretty good work of playing Matador to the bull. You see it again there. Owens doing it, top of the head.
These are the rounds where it matters in a close fight. Both fighters snapping a 14-month layoff tonight. Both looking to bounce back from recent defeats. Many of these rounds have been closely contested, almost giving you the feeling that if someone did just a little bit more, they could steal it down the stretch.
Yeah, neither has really separated themselves from the other one to such a degree that they could coast or that they've already shown that they're far better. This fight is still, I think, anyone's fight. Referee warns Abdul Kakarov get the punches up a little bit. That one was on the belt. Leaping left hook.
Pair of jabs from Vashon Owens.
Right hand gets through. Maybe it stumbled him as he went square. You can lose your balance when that happens.
Big pop from the Minneapolis crowd, sensing Abdul Kakarov could be hurt. Owens putting his punches together well, snapping back the head of his opponent with the jab.
Beautiful right hand. Something caught Abdul Kakarov. He looked hurt. He still looks a little bit wobbly.
Can 31-year-old Vashon Owens, fighting in front of his hometown here for the 8th time in 17 pro fights inside the historic Armory in downtown Minneapolis, can he finish what might be a hurt Abdul Kakarov?
I do think you're right. Owens is headhunting it just a little bit. Would love to see him mix it up a little bit more. I think it would really open up his offense.
The thing Abdukakhorov has to avoid in this constant stance switching is squaring up. Take a little bit too long, getting too fancy on the back and forth, you can get caught. Can Owens time him with one of those big right hands?
Also, you've seen Abdukakhorov do it a few times, but if your opponent's going to give you this much room to move, you need to use that movement, even if it looks like you're backing up, to pull them into a trap. And you've seen it a couple times where Owens has walked into punches. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. There's another one. Perfect example. It looks like the person's backing away, and obviously they are, but they're backing away to set traps. Both fighters landing good right hands.
Final 20 seconds of round 8. Sean Owens in the pink trunks.
I'm going to say slight advantage in power to Owens. It looks like his punches have more of an effect on his opponent than vice versa.
So maybe at this point in the fight, you could certainly argue the opposite of that at the midpoint, but we've seen some nice ebbs and flows here, but it looked like a big round for Sean Owens. 2 rounds to go in this 10-round welterweight tilt. But a big round for Owens as they continue to trade momentum, trade shifts of adjustment periods. It was these quick right hands from Sean Owens here in round 8.
Yeah, you can see him chasing with the jab, and that was that right hand as Abdukakhorov went square and bent over, didn't see it coming. It hit him clean, and it kind of wobbled him a little bit. He recovered. He certainly wasn't hurt that bad, but it definitely landed. Best punch of the round, I would argue. And I think this is what it shows, is that Owens needs to step it up in terms of the volume a little bit. When he is the one dictating the terms of the offense by virtue of frequency, Abdukakhorov has a little bit of trouble dealing with all of that. And by the way, combination punching too.
We last saw Owens in December of 2021, a 10-round decision defeat to Alberto Puello, who has since gone on to win the WBA title at 140 pounds and will defend opposite Rolando Romero in April. Abdukakhorov looking to bounce back from his own decision loss to Cody Crowley the same month in 2021. Here we are 14 months later, round 9.
That's better. That is much better from Owens. A little bit off balance and paid for it somewhat, but I love that he was putting those hands together in combination, changing the timing, changing the speed, changing the power. A little bit more of that, I think, would pay dividends.
What can Abdukakhorov do to change this momentum? Tried to work in the body shots, ate a stiff jab. Abdukakhorov still looking for one shot at a time. Not a great formula for success when you're not landing those big power shots.
Again, I give Abdukakhorov credit for his ability to move, but he has to turn that defense into offense. Just getting away doesn't count with the judges. You have to turn that into something actionable.
Did you say Kujatillo Abdukakhorov starting to fade? It looks a little bit in this round.
Yeah, definitely. All that movement is definitely causing him to reserve and I think ration his offense a little bit. And again, the jab, consistent offense from Owens, I think it works.
Sean Owens switching to southpaw here to try to find success in the tail end of round 9. Most of his success has come from orthodox with those short, quick, stabbing right hands. The rare times he's been able to put punches together in combination, that speed advantage has given Abdukakhorov trouble.
A left hand leaping with a right hook behind it landed well for Abdukakhorov.
Not much on those shots from Sean Owens, but they're landing. Sometimes in close fights, that's what you need to get the nod from the 3 judges sitting ringside. Will their services be needed here as we close in on the final 40 seconds of round 9 in a very close battle between 2 welterweights going to get back in the win column?
This is good work on the inside from Owens. I mean, a lot of it isn't necessarily popping Abdukakharov's head back, but he's putting together some better work overall.
3 straight jabs connect for Sean Owens.
Nice right hand there. Catch and shoot from Owens. Great work.
One round to go. 9 in the book here. Welterweight featured fight of our Showtime Boxing Countdown show. Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell along with you on the call. Here are the pictures from round 9 as Vashon Owens started off very quick, Luke. Good combination punching, something we may need to see more out of him in the final round.
Yeah, you see a switching stance last minute as he attacks a squared Abdukakharov against the ropes. You see him finding his opportunities here as he's pressing the action and making him. This is what I mean about the feints, though. You saw Abdukakharov bring both hands out in front to stop what he thought was coming. If he can do that and pump and then go over to the top, right, fake and feint his way through, I think Abdukakharov is there for the taking.
Some of the best shots Vashon Owens has landed in this fight, and particularly there in round 9, is when Abdukakharov is exiting. Sometimes he accidentally squares up on the way out, and you're seeing Vashon Owens find him with some of those sneaky right hands, whether it be a counter uppercut, a lead right. 3 minutes remaining.
All right, last round. Let's see who wants it.
Sportsmanship embrace of the half hug between fighters. And now we're throwing punches. Power punching from Abdukakharov to get off first. Owens tried to work behind with that jab.
Yeah, Abdukakharov is just having a hard time disciplining Owens with power at this stage. Good little short left hook there. The second one misses, but the first one was good from Owens. I love this from Owens, getting Abdukakharov's back along the ropes. Not everything gets through, but it's such pressure, forcing him to work, forcing him to escape, and then eventually some of the combination punching bleeds through. I like this much better.
Owens works Abdukakharov back to the ropes. Very much feels like this final round is up for grabs.
Abdukakharov doing pretty well, jabbing in there, then throwing a power punch behind it.
You need, depending on the judges' scoring, to do a little bit more here, find a little bit of drama late.
The thing is this, even if you want to argue that Owens didn't effectively cut off the ring when he could have, and I think that's fair, the problem that Abdukakharov faces is that he was the one backing up, and then would you say backing up, he landed the harder punches? I mean, at times, certainly, but probably not overall. I don't think you can say that. And so that's going to be an uphill climb against the judges if this finally goes the full distance.
Certainly have to like the volume of Owens compared to Abdukakharov. He's done a much better job consistently finding a jab, and last 2 rounds starting to put his power punches together better in combinations as we see Vashon Owens.
Yeah, he landed a hard right hand that was short but very effective, followed by a left, and that has really got Abdukakharov hurt. He is much more aggressively clinching as a consequence.
Very impressive performance regardless of how this ends here for Vashon Owens, the 31-year-old from Minneapolis. Fought with confidence right from the opening bell, using that speed and reach advantage. Good right uppercut on the inside.
Yeah, he's kind of throwing like a shovel hook at times with that right. At times it's an uppercut, at times it's a hook, at times it's in between.
I wonder what, at the very least for visuals for the judges, how often has Abdukakharov's back been against the ropes?
Right. Or just moving away from the aggression, however effective it may have been.
Big power punches late from Vashon Owens. 10 rounds in the books. It's up to the 3 judges sitting ringside, but a nice back and forth spirited effort here from these welterweights. Kudratillo, Abdukakharov, and Vashon Owens, who climbs the turnbuckles, gives a wave to the adoring home crowd.
Who do you think won, BC?
Shouting out mom at home potentially there. I certainly like the overall volume and ring generalship of Vashon Owens. Some of the punches, the bigger punches in the middle round certainly came from Abdukakharov, who was game throughout as we look at the highlights from the final round here, round 10. But it was Owens that seemed to have hurt him twice in the second half of this fight, and at the very least, was, like I mentioned, the ring general, walking him around, cornering him, not always keeping him there, not always throwing as many shots as you would want to maybe leave no doubt. But if you're asking me who my unofficial scorecard goes to in terms of leaning, it's definitely in the direction of Vashon Owens. But these three judges will have the final say here in Minneapolis.
My Lord, it looks like he fell on top of barbed wire. His shoulders are so cut to pieces from so much clinching and punching and the abrasion, essentially, from contact.
That crowd, and it looks nearly full.
Looks
You talk about
a good-looking crowd.
Organic fight fans who get there early, certainly have their local favorites. Jamal James, the former world champion, tonight's co-main event of Showtime Championship Boxing, and Vashon Owens right here. They've adopted David Murrell Jr., the unbeaten super middleweight secondary title holder, as one of their own. But you don't even need a Minneapolis native on these cards. These fans come out. See who gets the edge here as we are closing in. Just 20 minutes to go until the start of tonight's main card, our main offering, a triple header on Showtime Championship Boxing, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Of course, only on Showtime. You see Vashon Owens waiting out his fate as Miguel Flores, our ring announcer, collects the scores from ringside. We're just about ready to find out who gets the W.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 10 rounds of boxing, we go to the judges' scorecards. Judges Scott Erickson sees it 98-92. Judge John Shorley sees it 99-91. And Judge Kyle Sheely sees it 97-93. All three judges in agreement for your winner by unanimous decision, Minneapolis' own Vashon Owens.
Vashon Owens. Luke Thomas, I told you, if I had to lean on one way, it would have been the Minneapolis native there. He ends up with the unanimous decision. Were the scores wider than you expected?
A little wide. 97-93 seems fine. The other ones were a little on the wide side.
99-91 and 98-92.
Yeah, that's a little on the wide side, but I think the right guy won. So in the end, all's well that ends well. I certainly would not complain about the decision. And, you know, listen, he was the hometown guy. I'm not saying the judges were not trying to do.
He was the busier fighter. He landed the better shot.
Really is. That's the issue. The issue is that he just, in the end, sometimes when guys are closely matched, not the same fighters, but closely matched, and the fights are kind of close, you can kind of take a step back and just be like, who just did more? Who tried to do more on the offensive side? I do give Abdukakarov a lot of credit for his defensive movement. In fact, we saw something like this recently here in my hometown of Washington, D.C. when Karin Chukadzian was fighting Jaron Ennis.
Sure.
You know, that's a different scenario. Obviously, we're talking about two different levels of fighters there, but the same point was a lot of movement out of one guy, and that's great. That actually is part of boxing, and it's a highly commendable skill. It's just hard to bank that in the judges' minds as something that they can count on to score. It's good in itself to get away from punches, to reset, but it doesn't cause damage. It doesn't do offense, obviously. And I think the problem with Abdukakarov is he just spent too much time acting defensively, even if there were some, pretty even rounds.
The speed of Owens ultimately disciplined him to a certain degree. Let him know that if we wanted more output from Abdukakarov, but every time he tried, for the most part, he was getting hit with clean counter, fast combinations in return. Hey, a big victory for Vashon Owens, who, like we mentioned, was coming off that loss 14 months ago to unbeaten Alberto Puello. Puello went on to move back down to 140, win a world title, has a big fight coming up, but let's see what Vashon Owens can do with this. Just like one young Mikkel Spencer, on the undercard, the 18-year-old who scored a devastating first-round knockout to get us going. But our three fights are now in the books as we finally, one more time, look ahead to the top of the hour, 9 p.m. Eastern. Showtime Championship Boxing and that vacant IBF world title at 140 pounds in the main event. Josh Taylor formerly had that world title, gave it up to move up for some bigger fights potentially for himself, but it opens up a big door of opportunity for Subriel Matias and Jeremias Ponce, both action fighters, both high-volume fighters with big knockout power. Let's see who can come out on top. Of course, if you don't have Showtime, we offer you 30 days for free at Showtime.com, but Luke Thomas, one more opportunity to bundle with Showtime and Paramount Plus. You can get a 30-day free trial right now by going to ParamountPlus.com/Showtime Bundle and use the code ALLNEW23 And you can bundle and save with Paramount Plus and Showtime. Talk about two major forces joining together, like a mega powers, little Hogan and Randy Savage for your pro wrestling fans.
I mean, the Showtime by itself is a pretty powerful product, if I do say so myself. You marry that with Paramount Plus, there's a lot you can do. Like you can watch Real Madrid beat Liverpool 5-2 at Anfield, like I did this past week.
There you go. Some soccer action from the Combat Sports Guy. Luke, we are Combat Sports Guys, Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas. Of course, we're here in the Morning Combat Studios in Jersey City, New Jersey. Of course, the action that we were calling took place at the Minneapolis Armory in Minnesota. But Luke Thomas, we host an award-winning combat sports show on Showtime Sports Digital there every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern on the Morning Combat YouTube channel. You can find us breaking down boxing, mixed martial arts, whatever's going on in combat. You like grappling. I like sometimes that bare-knuckle bonanza, all kinds of stuff going on. But as much as we looked at the Showtime boxing calendar coming up with everything from Tank versus Ryan Garcia to, March 25th, Caleb Plant and David Benavidez. How about this Bellator MMA calendar coming up on Showtime? Let's take a look at coming attractions for Bellator MMA. March 10th, can we stop right there, Luke Thomas?
Yep.
The $1 million lightweight World Grand Prix, an 8-man tournament, kicks off in San Jose, only on Showtime, with a quarterfinal matchup that just happens to be for the full 155-pound world championship, when defending champion in his first defense, Usman Nurmagomedov, yes, the cousin of former UFC champion Khabib Nurmagomedov, will take on a former UFC champion in his own right in Benson Henderson in atop a loaded card. Recent history for Bellator in terms of these tournaments with the world title and $1 million at stake? I've been loving it.
Usman Nurmagomedov, one of the most exciting fighters in the entire sport, irrespective of weight class, taking on Benson Henderson, who has had his ups and downs since going to Bellator. Certainly started inauspiciously against Koreshkov, but has had some good moments, certainly of late. I think he's a great entry into the World Grand Prix. He's a tough test for Usman, who has blown the doors off of everyone he's faced, but he's not faced anyone with the kind of experience that Benson Henderson has.
That same night in Sacramento, also a quarterfinal matchup here to kick off this 8-man World Grand Prix lightweight tournament. How about former featherweight champion and one of the brightest young stars in the game today, AJ McKee, who has moved up to lightweight in his last bout, going to take on the former champion, Patricky Pitbull, but the older brother of AJ McKee's biggest rival, current featherweight champion, current face of the franchise in Bellator, Patricio. We know how good Patricky is, a former lightweight champion himself, but you talk about synergy, storylines, getting these two together. There should be a very interesting test of whether AJ belongs in this lightweight division.
Also, should be noted that that Michael Chandler, who was able to beat Patricky Pitbull, could not beat Patricio. So I'd be curious to see if one guy can beat both brothers. I'm not sure that's happened yet.
A loaded schedule through March and April for Bellator MMA on Showtime, including to close in April. How about back-to-back nights in Hawaii?
Those are some of the best shows that Bellator does right there.
April 21st and 22nd, you see the Women's Flyweight Championship bout on that Friday night, April 21st. Liz Carmouche making her second title defense here against Deanna Bennett, fresh off the victory in the rematch over former champion Juliana Velasquez. And that Saturday night, another matchup in the World Grand Prix, this time at bantamweight. This is the final, the championship, when your full championship will be on the line. Let me get that right. The full champion is Sergio Pettis, who's injured and was knocked out of this tournament.
The winner of this fights him.
Interim champion is Rafion Stotts. The $1 million will be at stake there April 22nd in Hawaii. But even more than that, you'll get a ticket to a world title bout and the interim championship and that title belt as the champion of the tournament when Rafion Stotts faces Patchy Mix. And as much as Rafion Stotts has been winning us over step by step to win that interim title, there may not be a hotter fighter in this entire promotion than Patchy Mix.
Patchy Mix, just one of the most remarkable talents in the 135-pound division. He can do, we thought, only one thing. We thought he was just good at wrestling and then taking the back, and then lo and behold, yes, he is still good at that, but it turns out he can strike too. He has been a force in this tournament. Kind of entered as the dark horse, and here he is in the finals. And Rafion Stotts can do it all. We've seen that in virtually all of his contests against Juan Archuleta and then more recently. But the truth is, a guy like Patchy Mix, we saw it against Koji Horiguchi. He defeated the previous champion to open the tournament in ways that no one saw possible. Patchy Mix has just been this disruptor. We knew he was good. We didn't know he was a threat.
We might find out he's great. We might find out he's great if he can get that victory come April 22nd in Hawaii. And, of course, the final date on that calendar was May 12th, Bellator, Paris. Talk about the World Tour. Bellator was in Dublin, Ireland today. Paris on May 12th. A loaded early spring here in combat sports. Boxing, MMA on Showtime. You can't beat it.
Just as a reminder, you know, the MMA map of the world and the boxing map of the world, they don't necessarily go to all the same places or overlap in all the same ways. Hawaii, a longtime hotspot. France, this new rising hotspot. And Bellator, as you can see, they're going to be in all these different places. It's a fun time to be a combat sport.
Let's recap our triple header tonight as we close in 10 minutes away, only on Showtime, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to kick off in the 140-pound division with a pair of fighters with one defeat looking to make their name known. Rebooting once again, Elvis Rodriguez, the southpaw, Freddie Roach trained from the Dominican Republic, and Joseph Adorno. He's got big power. He's got a big chin. These two one-loss fighters are going to come in and they're going to let their hands go. This may steal the whole night. I know this main event's going to be great. This may end up stealing the whole night. I was going to say, the
main event is a tough act, not to follow, but to certainly eventually lead up to and to match when the night is all said and done. But you're right. If there's any kind of contender on this card that could give it a run for its money, it's that one.
We move to that co-main event when Jamal James, the former secondary world title holder at 147 pounds, lost that title belt to Raja Butayev back in 2021, makes his return back in his home here in Minneapolis, and welcomes 2016 Argentine Olympian Alberto Palmetta, an 18-1 record with 13 KOs. We'll see if the native of Minneapolis can continue what we just saw from Vachon there in that featured bout there in the triple header of Vachon Owens to get back on the win streak, a 16-month layoff. But Luke, our main event has been pretty much promised the all-action potential. We know both fighters are hungry. It's Jeremias Ponce from Argentina, 30-0, making his U.S. debut. Another power puncher in front of him, 18-1. Subriel Matias from Puerto Rico, all 18 victories by way of knockout. When you look at this main event, we crunch stats. We talked about how they got here. What about who wins? What are you looking for when these two touch gloves in just a couple hours from now?
Again, I think it's going to be, they're going to clash in the middle. I just don't think this is going to be a jab fest at all. I indicated it previously. I think the left hook is an insanely effective weapon of Matias, but I think Ponce is some of the best body punching in that division. And again, both guys, extremely high output. Let me tell you something, folks. These two are going to leave a piece of themselves in the ring today. Make no mistake about it. But in the end, I'm going to say personally, BC, you didn't quite ask, but I'm leaning towards Matias. I just feel like he's beaten better guys, and I also think that down the stretch, that power punching with the combination punching, it's just too much to deal with. But we shall see. Ponce seems like he is up for the opportunity.
Subriel Matias not getting ahead of himself, but if he wins the world title tonight in tonight's main event, he said, yeah, I'll just unify against WBC champion Regis Prograis. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Would you be in for that?
Yes, please. Okay. That would be great.
You got to win that first. Subriel Matias versus Jeremias Ponce. 12 rounds for the vacant IBF World Junior Welterweight Championship in tonight's main event. Luke Thomas, it's been fun to go up and down with you. Called a trio of preliminary cards tonight. And the final reminder that if you want to continue the action and watch it only on Showtime in just a few moments, you can go to Showtime.com, get your 30 days free right now. Or you can live on the edge here and go a little bit further. How about bundling Showtime with Paramount Plus? A 30-day free trial available at ParamountPlus.com/Showtime bundle for more information. And remember to use the code ALLNEW23. Hey, combine two big-time powers in the streaming game. It's going to be worth it. Tonight for Showtime Championship Boxing, we've got Bellator in the future. We've got the build to some big-time pay-per-view matchups coming up on the boxing side. Can't wait. Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, April 22nd. David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, March 25th. Going to be a very fun spring. But that's Luke Thomas. I am Brian Campbell. If you liked what you heard tonight, how about checking us out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Morning Combat YouTube channel. You can also go to youtube.com/Morning Combat. All of our bonus activity, our interviews. I got a big one coming up with Brandon Figueroa, who's going to be headlining on Showtime soon. We're talking to the biggest names in boxing, mixed martial arts, grappling. We're talking to grapplers now.
I don't talk to the bare knuckle guys. That's
all right. That's more the LTBC. We enjoyed it. Enjoy the fights this evening. Top of the hour. It's Matias versus Ponce. The title's on the line. Enjoy.
When you're authentic to who you are, everything else will fall in place.
People are gonna love, they're gonna hate, but you never know who's watching.
Everything I do, I want it to be as original as can be.
Somebody did it like this, I'm gonna do it this much iller.
Who comes back and rescues himself?
This was our moment to let people know how we felt as a team.
We've revolutionized this game with our influence.
What are your thoughts for the future?
I helped build the most magical place in the world.
What do you say we come in for my close-up now?
I always wanted to be part of something bigger.
I made it on my terms, not theirs.
Here's the twist.
Whoa! I'm in so much trouble, Manny.
It's over.
You have no idea what's next.
We are going to be more than they ever bargained for.
Babylon. Rated R. Now streaming on Paramount Plus.
You and I have traveled to the far reaches of space. But something's different now. This is the end, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very big night of action taking place here in the beautiful city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. For our opening attraction, Joseph Adorno, 140 pounds, and his opponent, Elvis Rodriguez, 139 3/4 pounds. In the welterweight division, Alberto Palmetta, 147 pounds.
Now it's my time to make a statement in professional boxing.
And his opponent, 146 3/4 pounds for the former world champion, Jamal James.
In your hometown. Be the first time we've seen you in 16 months.
Hey, y'all miss me or what? People miss me, I'm ready, and I just want to give a great show.
For the featured attraction of the evening, the undefeated Jeremias Ponce, 139.5 pounds, and his opponent, El Orgullo de Maternillo, Subriel Matias. Matias weighs in at a ready 139.25 pounds.
I didn't come here on vacation. I'm here to win and to prove that I'm the best. The Prime Marnillo is gonna win by knockout before the 7th round.
Does this fight go to distance?
Knockout.
There you have it.
Matias versus Ponce on Showtime.